Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
Welcome. Do I start? You want me to do it? I thought Paranoid American was gonna intro.
Oh, I feel like this is the ultimately a Xirtus SyncTank.
Oh my lord. Well, let's say luckily we have the very illustrious Miss Illustrious herself, the Unfiltered Rise podcast host with the most, Heidi Luv, the woman who's done more for Mormonism than Trey Parker or Matt Stone combined, I think.
Well, that's an intro. Thank you. I'm happy to be here as always. I love talking some Mormon talk. And what good are we without Mormons? And this chat today, I won't ruin it, right? Like John Dee. Yeah. He's got a stone. He talked to angels. What the hell?
Right. And we wouldn't, it's funny because when I was a kid, I used to think it's crazy how they won't, like the missionaries, like Protestant missionaries go to like Africa. And then they tell you, hey, if you read our Bible, then we'll feed you, and that's basically their whole deal is like, we'll let you eat food if you like learn about John 3:16, but you have to do it in God's language, English, which is really weird. I always thought until I started learning about Shakespeare being Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford, and that John Dee was so important to the creation of modern English. Because if you read Beowulf, the way they sell it to you, and it's in Old English and the Anglo-Frisian tongue, you realize that English has nothing to do with English. It's like English 2.0. It's like Coca-Cola Classic or something like that. It's not the original.
It's
but this
like
new
Pepsi Clear.
It's like Pepsi, the Pepsi, for sure. But there's this whole new English. We speak New English, which is the Queen's language, and it's not just the Queen's language. It's the Freemasons' language, and it's more than that. It's John Dee and Edward Kelly's synthesis of angelic tongues, right? Like John Dee created the modern English, or you believe what he said, because he said something different. He didn't say I came up with English. He said, I put my head in a hat and I use magic rocks, sound familiar? And then I come up with new way of speaking. It's not even a new way, it's Adamic. It's the Enochian tongue. English, the angels' language. We're speaking God's language. God being Adam, of course, as Brigham Young said. So
there it is. And everyone that I talk to goes, what does John D. Rockefeller have to do with anything? I'm like, he was the cousin of Joseph, but that's not we're not even going there today. We're talking about another guy, and he's so hidden, and it's so sad. Like I mean, I'm not an occultist, but I sure do read a lot of books. And
you're like an exoteric. You're like
I know I'm some weirdo.
You're like the deculting.
Cosmic sync. Is this in the capacity? I have a question, I guess.
All right, you in the front. What do you have? Yes, you. Sorry.
So Enochian, the language. Like the only time I can remember that I've ever heard somebody speaking Enochian is recordings of Aleister Crowley. There's a few of them. I have it on vinyl. It's a very hipster thing to say, especially if you're talking about vinyl with Crowley. But
if you play it backwards, it's actually to Chicago.
right, exactly. But I don't know, when you listen to it, like, it's, I don't know, like, if it's specific to like Crowley, but like his pronunciation is like, it feels very intentionally, like it feels like it's made to sound like sinister, or like we're like, because he talks that way anyway. So like I've been pressuring Andreas a little bit to do an AI prompt to get like Crowley's voice, so I can use it for a project that I'm wanting to work on.
We can feed that into 11 Labs, my friend, and then
You can
just
do
have
that?
them say anything you want.
I want to do a back and forth between Crowley and Jim Morrison with an American Prayer and the Book of the Law, because if you do every other line, because it's all late anyway, it's that's a whole other
Do you think the OTO would try and claim copyright?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Well, there's something happening right now, and we discussed it recently with Weiser. But see, this is the problem with me. If I go to discuss John Dee, no matter what, I'm just going to find any way that I can to bring it into Crowley, because I'm more familiar with Crowley than I am John Dee. Although there's some things to be discussed. One major commonality is like the Andreas and I have discussed many times. There's a great book on the sinking of the Lusitania and Aleister Crowley's role in that, and how like overtly that relates to John Dee's goings on with the whole Armada and the Queen, and how that all went down. So I don't know what direction we want to go today, but I would like to talk about the obvious stuff that we've discussed before, but I would like to go deeper into it, Heidi, if you're more familiar with the obelisk scrawling mirror thing and all that.
I feel like it's also Sunday, so we have to talk about the good Book of Mormon a little bit, and at least my introduction to some of the reason why me and Heidi were even talking about it is that she equates John Dee magic and Enochian and all the sigils to Joseph Smith in like a very direct way, and I think that that's kind of interesting. So I would actually like to. I need a refresher. Like, what are the similarities between Joseph Smith and John Dee?
Well, I mean, if you look at what Joseph had, especially with the parchments, he's definitely practicing Solomonic magic. But since I've talked to you all last, I did a really good deep dive on Dartmouth College. They really like to obfuscate this. And it's like, wait a minute, there's so much going on here that this is like critically important, because his cousin from both sides, Professor Johnny Smith, worked at Dartmouth College, and he was a professor of not only languages, but the rare book stealer. And he owned the Scotochronicon, multiple other very important books that Joseph would have had access to. And I do believe he was very smart. Look, I don't hate Mormonism. I hate what they do to Mormonism, right? Like they destroy it because they want it unmagical. They want to unmagic Mormons. So
I confronted a couple Mormons at my house that were coming by relatively regularly, and then they switch them out. So you get used to one couple of people, and then they can bring, and they do now the sisters. So they sent out the girls, and if there's a girl around, they can come in and hang out. If there's no, which if you guys watch that really effed up movie Heretic that came out not long ago, they do a play on that where he's like, oh, you can hear my wife. Like, would that really work? Like, she's in the kitchen making blueberry muffins or something,
I don't think it would work after that show, but
I was kind of disappointed to find out from these one of the Mormon girls in particular was very knowledgeable on the more esoteric side of things. So I wanted to know about the fire salamander, because I was a fan of the fire salamander idea, and like that whole thing is much cooler than just taking the tablets out of the hat deal. And I was told that not only how like that was made up, but like how it came.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
So they went off on me for at least an hour explaining detail by detail how that specifically came about, and I can't argue.
They changed it. They changed it, but it was originally something like a toad. And there's an affidavit to back this up, a court document that backs this, and they don't like it. And I'm going to be devil's advocate here. I get crucified for it all the time, and it is what it is. But I dare say they set Mark Hoffman up to make that story a little better. I'm sorry to say.
And they made him die. Yeah, or they killed people died over this, which is
so you're arguing, just to be clear, that there's some validity to the story. It was
Yes,
embellished,
changed.
and then that embellishment was taken as a falsehood. Is that
So
like
what actually was the real, and remember the time frame that we have here, and you have to remember the background, the real background of Joseph Smith and his family is from near Salem, Topsfield, Massachusetts. We have very distinct selectmen of Topsfield, Captain Samuel Smith, all these people, but the problem is the Captain Samuel Smith, but his father above that, just Samuel Smith, he was involved in the Inquisition. So the Mormons do not like to speak about witchcraft because he helped hang some witches. The witch he helped hang was Mary Easty. And the problem with that is they don't want anything to do with magic anymore since Joseph died. And Brigham's church, which we've spoke about many times, Joseph's church was very magical minded, but Brigham's church was not. And so they changed everything. But think of what they did with that. It's so powerful. They took a witch's familiar, which is a toad, and they changed that into something that's very Templar-esque, right? This white salamander not forged by the flame. Let's get real. They made that nice, and they could have buried that in the vault, but they chose to blast it. I remember when this came out because I'm old. That they blasted it on the Ensign. They blasted it on all these things. The Ensign is the magazine that the church puts out. And I remember this so clearly that they kind of ran with it. And I thought, wow, that's really a weird thing to run with for the Mormons,
Yeah.
So Heidi, I'm still disappointed now because I brought out like the Manly P. Hall Secret Teachings of All Ages. Looked up
and they
in
crapped
the
and
appendix.
left.
I showed them the thing with the salamander. I read them from multiple sections of the book when that comes up in the significance of it in alchemy, and I was like, I really like this idea. I gotta say, I was kind of attached to it. So you're kind of spoiling it anyway because
Witchcraft.
you're saying it was a toad.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta look at the picture I put up there because compare this white salamander. This is a regular white salamander to Pepe, and when you start thinking about the Pepe Keck connection, I think there's something kind of interesting there about Mark Hoffman's whole thing. And we probably should know a bit about Mark Hoffman because he was allegedly this great recorder and archaeologist, essentially. And all of a sudden, he's involved with the deaths of important people, and he's a creator of forgeries. And the idea that he was just up to a point putting out documents until they were trying to buy all the documents they could from him. The Latter-day Saint Church was trying intellectual reserve, which is, by the way, the Disney company of the Mormons. They own all of the symbolism for Mormonism is intellectual reserve. So intellectual reserve went and said, we're going to pay millions of dollars. Just whatever you got, we need more. And it's this weird devil's bargain. They're going to give him so much money. He's got to produce all these documents. And then they're saying, well, he's producing fake documents because he can't keep up with the delivery that we need 30 or 40 documents, and he's only got 12, so he has to produce more or something like that. And this person, who's it? The person that originally he killed, allegedly, right?
It was someone involved with the documents, but the problem with him as well is what happens to him after the fact. But I'm going to let you finish first.
I just wanted to remember the name of the guy. He supposedly killed. I'm trying to find it right here. Murder. William E. McClellan, I think is the one. Or
McClellan Papers. We don't even want to go there today.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, there were a number of documents that he sold to a very wealthy Mormon, right? And then they say he possessed an unregistered Uzi machine gun pistol that he used to kill the person that was purchasing the documents. And they use this to lock him up essentially for the rest of his life. But all right, I want to hear Heidi's version of it because I think you have more to say.
Well, I just know that so I have an insider that actually takes care of him at the prison now. And so I know that he is still there, and I know what happened to him after the fact. And anybody can fact check me on this because I fact checked him because that's what you do. And so he actually stopped speaking to the press. At first, he was speaking to the press. This is why we actually get the Lafferty murder case, and we get to know about Under the Banner of Heaven, which I actually met the surviving husband on the Lafferty case. And had a very in-depth conversation with him, but they moved forward and said, hey, we're Mormon, we'll speak to you about this. And he wouldn't. Mark Hoffman was like, nah, I'm done talking to you guys. And then we found out why. He had tried to unalive himself, apparently left in maximum security, unattended, not checked on for over 12 hours, and laying on his right arm, his writing arm. And I promise you, he will never forge again because it is now completely neurologically damaged. So after that, he shut up. Yeah.
Heavy.
It's interesting. That's all you can say.
He could
You
still
know.
use the left side, though. I think the biggest part of being a good forger is just the
left-hand
will and the
side.
commitment to do it.
Right. He might have been teaching himself some more things. Like, I mean, but doesn't surprise me that, you know, they've tried a couple times to say he's attempted twice at least. So I just find that very interesting, knowing that I work at a psychiatric hospital as a nurse. We have to check on them every 12 minutes and round on them and check their breaths. And I know that it's the same. It's not probably every 12 minutes at the prison, but it's often. It's at least once an hour.
Whatever happened with Epstein? Anyway, I also want to say, like, it was confirmed by so many people before they said it was a forgery. He had like the most famous, not just Mormons, the most authentic. It was authenticated documents by some of the greatest document authenticators, right? Handwriting experts in the world, like Charles Hamilton Jr. And then the person from the Mormon Church who is from he's from the first presidency, Dalen H. Oaks. He's like, I think one of them, isn't he basically the next runner-up or something like that?
I believe so.
Prophet?
He should be.
Yes. He's the guy who's going to be the prophet next, right? Assuming all goes well.
Assuming.
And
how are you spelling prophet?
Wow.
Easy. I'm a prospective member here.
But I mean, he said there's no problem. Like, we can easily we can connect the salamander, this white salamander, to the angel Moroni. He said that, you know, that there's no problem that the words white salamander can be reconciled with the angel Moroni, because salamanderer might also refer to a mythical being thought to be able to live in fire.
Well, it's an elemental, and so we're literally talking about like like it's like in a dream, the way that you'll have something that you're accessing, but your mind, with the power of your mind, is such that it will create an image that's like a delivery system. Like, it's like, how do you articulate this in a way that you can actually receive? And that's like the hierophantic task is one of that. You have something that's so abstract or so it's spiritual in nature that what is the receptacle to which you're going, that's something that can provide this information to you in such a way. So it's an intermediary kind of like representation that your mind can give you, was my understanding of all the elementals, obviously not just the salamander. But okay. These are 3 different books on the same thing, or these are?
I believe it's the same book.
They're
different publications.
The book with the stamp, is the one I've read, and it's really good.
Okay. So I was sharing. You showed for a second, Thomas, the this pairing of Jim. This is crazy, but Jim Morrison's An American Prayer was written in a specific way, and if you look at the actual, like, there's like the scans of his own handwriting, you can see the way that it's laid out with these dashes. And so there's an image there on the side. So if you count these dashes, if you go through the whole thing, it's very close, like one off from the first section of Aleister Crowley's Book of the Law. And so I discovered that if you do, this is a Kabbalistic tool that's often used just with words and Bible verses, where they'll go every other verse in order to, like, it's related to, like, if you put your hands, like folding your hands in prayer, like, it's an interweaving. So I interweave the text. So here you have the King of Wands. Notice that there's the lizard behind his back and then the lizard by his side. So this is literally the Lizard King, right? And so, and then you have for Crowley, you have what's the first line of the thing is the manifestation of Nuit, right? Or however you say, the Egyptian goddess, that's the sky goddess that is infinite space, right? And then you have Jim Morrison is known for his celebration of the lizard. Is celebration of the lizard a pun on treating newt as though it's a pun on, like, a newt, like a
It's like a salamander kind of.
Right, kind of thing. So it's relatable in that way. So I have this this is something that throughout the text there's examples of things that are just unfreaking believable. Like they're like where this is a conversation between the two that gets sometimes so specific and so direct. Like Crowley saying my incense, well, Crowley's channeled work saying my incense is made of resinous woods and gums, and then the next line from Morrison is mirror box, are you more real than me? I'll burn you and set you free. It's like these lines. Yeah, there you go. You could just jump right into it. Yeah. So and then like Crowley having like, and I have a secret glory for them that love me, and then the next line is mirror mask, I love you, mirror. So it's like it's so specific, it gets ridiculous. But yeah, no, I don't know. I just wanted to share that. Also, that the newt is kind of funny.
Yeah, and just like lizard people and salamanders. I remember people saying that when I was a kid as a joke. But there's some things about Mark Hoffman that are kind of interesting because we're told that this is a guy who hated the Mormon Church, which is, first off, as far as we can tell, not true. He was I served on a mission. He was a member of the church. They say he was an atheist, but only privately. Like he privately had become kind of an atheist or something. But if that's the case, then he served on a mission, married in the church. His wife and him, they say his wife left him and they broke up or something. But when did that happen? After the forgeries came to light. So he was considered a good standing member of the church.
Wife never saw anything. Yeah, never, ever.
And so all of a sudden he's considered to be this liar and everything else, but only after this all happens. Up until while the church is buying these records, while Dalen Oaks is presenting that it's completely possible that Moroni is a lizard person, essentially, he's basically considered to be, and he served in Bristol too. So he went to where Brigham went. He's got a really interesting history connecting him with the history of the Mormon Church. There's not a lot of evidence that he was somehow like angry at the church or anything like that. And if he's someone who's so deep into the church that he's trying to create these forgeries. The other thing is that there's not a lot of evidence that he was supposed to be this great forger, because the people that are referring to these letters as authentic, they've shown that this is some of the greatest forgeries allegedly of all time. These are some of the
ink, like everything.
It's too perfect to be someone who just was, they make him sound like he's just this idiot from this backwards part of Utah. He lived in like the bottom rung.
They like that. Yeah, they like that idiot thing.
But an idiot, if he's such an idiot, like he did an amazing job. I mean, this is exactly what they say about Joseph Smith. Like, well, he wasn't educated, so and great. Well, then do it again for Mark. And
incredibly,
who are the people? The Tanners. So the first group to say that these are forgeries are Gerald and Sandra Tanner. What's Gerald's middle name? Gerald Dee Tanner.
Well, she's Brigham Young's
D-E-E?
progeny.
D-E-E, yeah.
Okay.
Sandra Tanner is related directly to Brigham Young. She speaks about it often. And I believe she's a granddaughter or something. Just FYI on that. And for people to look up this Toad story, I do like to give my references because people come hard at me for this because it's very unbelievable. And for you to speak to your missionaries in future, B.H. Roberts Foundation. You will find this E.D. Howe, October 1834, for the testimony affidavit of Willard Chase from September 21st, 1823. If you guys want to look it up, there it is. It is absolutely there. And, they can't say that it isn't. I mean, it is what it is. And here's the problem with it is he doesn't just say it's a toad. It became something like a man and punched him in the face. So that's kind of a lot, but there it is. Like we can't just chuck it out because it sounds crazy. I know that it's not my story. I got yelled at because, people were saying, oh, she's crazy. I've never heard this once in my life. And I'm like, super cool. I'm not unhinged. It's there. I'm just a better researcher than you. Go find it. Shout out Old World Micmac.
We're starting drama.
No. I really like him. He's got great information.
Micmac's cool, and he can read and speak in Micmac.
I want to emphasize too on like what David was picking up on that I think was the implication too is that Hoffman, who's a forger by his own, there's a quote here. When I was 12 years old, I began collecting coins. Soon afterwards, figured out a crude way to fool other collectors by altering coins to make them look desirable. So he's ascribing between the ages of 12 and 14, he perfected a forgery method for like just the coin collector market. So this was a guy that was maybe first and foremost a really good forger, which is something that was claimed. Like think of Joseph Smith in some cases too, especially of doing like treasure, like hidden treasures and finding all sorts of hidden little items and objects. But this guy, Mark Hoffman, he almost seems like he has more correlations to Joseph Smith too. Like he kind of fits into this.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say whether he did or did not commit a crime, and he was convicted of it. But I will say this. At that time, remember, we're talking about the Inquisition before this. I don't know that people would put it down on paper and go to all the trouble to go be present in court to give an affidavit and statements against someone. And they just say it's because the Willard Chase family hated the Smiths and they were neighbors. Listen, Dr. Nathaniel Smith that saved Joseph Smith's leg, also cousin on both sides. Okay. They will say he has nothing to do with the families. It's a lie. You can trace it back in the genealogy, and I have. And so when you go do that and see that he married Sally Chase, the neighbor, okay, and there's this intermingling of these families that doesn't seem all this angry or whatnot, right? And so it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense other than the fact they were trying to spin it. I'm not saying that he didn't forge something to help the church, but I think he did it for certain reasons. I think that they saw the problem, they needed to get ahead of the problem, and it sounded much better for this to be a salamander, because then we get into Knights Templar and we already know that there's connections there actually through Canada, which heads to Micmac country. So anyways,
but the point being, like, what's if the salamander was introduced to replace the toad? It's on multiple levels. One of those levels is the salamander is a better symbol for them to incorporate going forward, right?
The difference between alchemy and witchcraft, right?
Like 100.
The toad totally brings it to a witchcraft place. Like, so
Yes.
It's classic. You know what I mean? Like she's got the
100.
boiling pot and she puts the toad and the hair and the, yeah.
Yep. And
but also
speaking of
Egyptian
hair,
magic.
yes. Yeah. If you know anything about this family, like it's not like they didn't continue on. I mean, they dug them up, they made coffin canes, they cut their hair and put them in the knobs and gave them out to everybody with the rotting carcasses on the canes. And then his wife snipped hair also and wore it till the day she died. So like, let's not play that these people don't know things. You know what I mean? Like that's what the church hates. The church hates it.
And the other,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to quickly say, like, so the idea that he confessed, right? So at a certain point, you have the attorneys for the Intellectual Reserve that are working against Mark Hoffman, and they're making a plea bargain. So in the plea bargain, they're going to say, you have to say that this was a forgery. If you want to reduce we'll drop some of these charges against you. We already have you dead to rights, essentially, about the murder of Stephen Christensen. That's who it is. And so Stephen Christensen, supposedly murders this guy. And you can watch this, like Netflix has, which is weird because we have Netflix documentaries that talk about the scary, weird, fringe Brighamite versions of Mormonism. And then they have the Mark Hoffman documentary, which is the most gracious Netflix documentary on Mormonism, talking about this guy who's trying to make the church look bad, essentially. And so he's not saying that anything's fake until they force him to. Then he says, okay, I forged the letter, and he has people saying, okay, I have witnesses that he actually disavowed himself from the church. They're probably, I haven't found a record that says he ever left the church, and I don't know when exactly he would have been excommunicated. The church doesn't have a published record of that if they did.
Well, Lori Vallow's never been excommunicated, so maybe they didn't.
But you know who has been excommunicated is the Tanners, right? The Tanners both left the church, and so this whole thing is really interesting.
But one of the things that Mormons are really good at is having money, and one of the ways they can show that they truly respect what you're doing is probably by giving you money. And they gave Hoffman ungodly amounts of money, right? And I feel that
they say they didn't.
Well,
They say because they
Is
were
this the one
smart
time
and
we're-
did
we're
it through
taking
a
their word for
private
it?
bishop. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they
did
have-
it through a private bishop.
But I'm just saying is that the second anointing is also one of the things that they bestow upon
Yep.
people that make a very huge. It's like getting 33rd degree in Mormonism is getting the second anointing, right? So
Yep.
it doesn't seem out of a question that Hoffman could have been offered a second anointing, which means that despite everything that he goes through in the public sphere, he still knows that he gets to reap all of the extra like afterlife benefits, especially if he's still active.
And
Well,
his
and he has
family
kid.
were
He
part
has
of
a
that weird
kid.
polygamous thing too. Yeah,
Yeah.
they own him on that one. But he
mean-
admitted his family were part of the fringe polygamous sect of what's his name? Like the odd what's that guy? The weird guy who wrote books like the wife of Jesus or whatever.
Oh no, yeah, that's the whole Templar. It's probably through the Kingstons. Yeah,
Maybe there's the other guy.
Kingstons.
Maybe the branch group too. Ogden Kraut, whoever Ogden Kraut was a part of.
Okay.
I don't know if he's in the Kingstons or not. Kingstons are like definitely the richest, one of the weirdest groups of the Mormons. Super rich, and yeah, they like marry their daughters to their cousins and everything like that. They're not the FLDS though. They're not part of the Warren. Jeff, what's his name?
No, Warren Jeffs
Jeffs,
is
not Warren Jeffs.
separate, but Kingstons actually believe they have the divine right to rule and that they keep their bloodlines pure by marrying and intermarrying. And then they got rich enough. And by the way, they donate to some really interesting politicians, but that's beside the point. They don't like
Ogden
Mitt
Kraut's
Romney.
really an interesting guy, by the way, for sure.
So I'm just like, okay, this is very interesting to look at this. And then they got enough money to actually have a geneticist on hand to make sure they don't have the birth defects from marrying their sisters and brothers or whoever. They figure it out.
You're trying to cheat the system, man. That's classic. I was just going off about this on freaking Twitter because I was like, people are talking about the loophole phenomenon with like Shabbat for Jewish people, and that they have all these ways of getting around these rules of the Shabbat. You're like, okay, well, how can you do this? Well, we do it this way, and it's like you're trying to get around. But I'm like, that has its basis in the Old Testament many times. The most direct place that I know that is in the building the temple in the first place, where they're like, Hashem is like, don't build the temple to David, and then Solomon goes ahead, builds it anyway by using materials from an outside land. Because even though the point was that it won't be built by human hands, it still isn't the temple. So there's these arguments, but then I was like, hey, throughout what is half the freaking New Testament, is a search for loopholes having to do with what is explicitly said in the gospel. And then even beyond that, you look at the papacy and just like all through time, this is why I sometimes have a difficult time communicating with like heavy duty Catholics, because they'll like negate something that's like overtly said in the gospel because this Pope 300, 500, whatever years ago made some correction to the thing, and then they're like, oh, but he said this, therefore whatever. I'm like, isn't the word of Jesus Christ the thing? Like, excuse me, but it's like we go there. But I wanted to ask, because I'm looking at the Seer Stone thing with Joseph Smith, and I just want to know, like, what are the specific correspondences between what John Dee was doing with the seer thing with the obelisk, like, because I've seen it in person actually at the British Museum, and it's not, it's there's the beeswax figures with the geometrical septogram and all of that, the two different ones. But apparently this was more of like a visualization tool too, because these are actually meant to rotate with each other. So it's like it communicates another, like you seems like you're pretty hip to this area. So I've seen it demonstrated where people would just use paper. So they'll make a paper model of each, and then they'll twist them into each other. And also the fact that there's a crystal ball that was supposed to be on top. And it's not just what you're seeing with the Enochian, like flat, it's actually like what the Enochian does through the crystal as you're looking from one side and you're rotating the two sections together. And like, I don't even know like how much of this is in the mind, how much of this is material, what does this have to do, how does this connect specifically to Mormonism? Because it seems like it's taken directly from, like, it almost feels like there's like a secret, like there's like a very esoteric like line of practice that is being utilized, not just referenced, but utilized by Joseph Smith. So Can you speak on that a little bit?
Well, I can tell you my hypothesis is that I do believe the family was, exposed to magic. Not only that, I believe that Joseph Smith was a Martinist. They all want to say Freemasonry. Me and Paranoid American have spoken about like the time frames and the lining up. He would have had, they always say, oh, he didn't know anyone. He wouldn't know how. He was definitely able to be at Dartmouth. This cousin has got all this rare book knowledge. He's
And his
also a
brother was at
professor of
the
language.
Hiram went
And they
to
lived
the
there.
Morse College, which was
This
part of
is what I'm
Dartmouth.
talking.
Yeah.
And guess what? The family lived there when that was going on campus at the trustee's house. And so this has like been all obfuscated, like completely. Also, Solomon Spaulding was a student of Professor Johnny Smith, and Dr. Nathan Smith goes on to make Yale Medical School. And that the Mormons are a big part of Skull and Bones and its creation and have their own branch here
right?
in Utah. Yes.
So with Yale, Skull and Bones, how does that, is it just that there's people who were Skull and Bones members who then got
they're part of the founding, the same group that founded the Yales. Also, there's a group of Skull and Bones at the BYU, and I forget if it's also the Utah.
U of U. Yeah, BYU would never, because they want to look wholesome.
Secret societies, yeah.
Yeah.
This is the explanation right here. Was Russell M. Nelson part of a satanic cult called Skull and Bones in college? This is from Fair Latter-day
No, it's another. They're like, no, it's another Skull and Bones. They're completely different Skull and Bones. We just weirdly named.
Is that really what they try to argue?
Basically,
it is a different Skull and Bones, but it was set up, and it's one of the only sanctioned ones set up by the actual founding members to ever be created. And the only other difference is, instead of Scroll and Key, it's Owl and Key. And so they have knowledge.
There's a couple of things there too. So like because Hiram Smith, Joseph's brother, was welcomed into Dartmouth's Morse College for Native Americans or something is the name of the program. It's essentially they call Masonry the Moorish sciences, right? So Morse College, one of the ideas is that they would find people that were eligible or intelligent enough, and they would kind of foster them or advocate for them to go into a school, that whether or not they were wealthy enough to go into the school. Like it was something that basically a scholarship program.
And it was not created for Native Americans. It was created as priests to teach them to be basically priests to the Native Americans. And so these people that went there, I mean, this was like they had the same like classes, they were intermingled. It wasn't separate, it wasn't less than, it was just set up for a specific reason to go teach to the Native people, and that's it.
And also the kind of ideal that they thought, well, we're the new American natives to an extent, right? Like we're the real Americans now. And this all happened in the 20s. So the 1820s is William Morgan's disappearance and the beginning of the anti-Masonic hysteria. So all of a sudden they have to hide Masonry, and they kind of have to shut down publicly a lot, because at that point everybody is so pro-Mason, but not
But Joseph
anymore.
Married his wife, but that's fine.
Yeah.
What's
later
William Morgan's relationship to all this, other than to just say he picked up on it and then rejected it, or what?
That his wife then got married to Joseph Smith of
Spirit Sealed.
Is that really what it is?
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot today. I like this. What the hell?
What was her name, Heidi?
Lucinda Pendleton Morgan.
Yep. And she threw a big fat fit when Joseph died. P.S. And you're not supposed to do that as like the whatever wife you are. It's supposed to be number uno that gets to be like in black. And she showed up in black and was like hysterical. And it's all noted that this happened, like throwing yourself on the coffin. I'm like, oh boy, this is scandalous.
Why am I getting like Marjorie Cameron vibes right now? What is
for sure? For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's another big important thing is that these women were not like, if you think about it, you got one teenage bride, and if you're this blonde psycho occultist who's got a cult, you're going to marry as many hot teenagers as you can. And instead, Joseph Smith, I'm just saying, like Brigham Young, right? But like what Joseph Smith does is he gets these spirit sealings to all sorts of the like witchy women. Like look at the women that he's associated with. They're a lot older than him a lot of the time, like 15, 20 years older than him. They're super interested in magic. and divine revelation, and their spirit soul bonding. That's really what this is what the Mormons say to this day. It's like, well, he might not have actually even had sexual relations with that woman, quote unquote. He might have just been that he was spirit bonded to these women, and he really prayed. He wanted not to, like polygamy wasn't his idea.
He didn't inhale, right? He did not have sexual relations with that.
But this angel of fire came down with a fiery sword and said, "Bro, you better marry these women. You better do it." And he was like scared by the angel with the fiery sword. It's like, all right,
come on, bro,
got my left hand behind my back. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly. He had to do it. I mean, it was forced. And just so people know, on the Skull and Bones founder, William Huntington Russell is the one we are speaking of, and not to put apart from the Huntington Relief Society, which was one of the first Relief Society presidents ever, specifically Zena Diantha Huntington Young, who was very important. And speaking of women that had powers, she was known to have the best outcomes giving blessings, because they used to give blessings anyways, when now they can't hold the priesthood.
Matriarchal.
Wait a second. I thought that Bruce Wayne's great grandfather founded Skull and Bones. I specifically saw it in the Adam West Batman movie where they say, sure, I heard he was tapped for Skull and Bones, and they're corrected, no, he founded Skull and Bones. So it wasn't Bruce Wayne's great
grandfather. Wasn't that in the TV
Mormon
show? Not that was in the TV show. But yeah, Bruce Wayne probably a Mormon. Bruce Wayne's probably a Mormon.
Probably. I mean, they always are. It's always Mormons. And so they always think it's that one 3-letter word we're not going to say because I don't want to get shut down. But it's probably not them. It's the Mormons.
Babylonian. Yeah. But there's also something there because the women. Yeah, if you look at who he was bringing Joseph Smith welcomed into the church to be priests, you have black priests. There's even an offshoot for a while of black Mormons because Brigham Young doesn't allow them to stay with the church.
No.
But there's an entire group of black Mormons that are practicing African mysticism, which is why Joseph was so into them. He's like, well, you obviously know all kinds of stuff that hasn't been corrupted by the apostasy of the East-West schism of the Orthodox Catholics after the fall of Istanbul or Constantinople. And yeah, this is the fun one for me, is that they got kicked out. First off, Joseph Smith is a transhumanist blonde dude from New York City who goes through Missouri's Mormon Wars, where they start genociding Mormon kids. And they find out that they can go to Missouri and then Illinois, because there's a guy in Illinois who's a government official who says you can have this piece of land called Commerce. And they're going to turn Commerce into, all of a sudden, he's like, oh, I'm going to build this new Star Wars Episode 1 city called Nauvoo. Not Naboo, but Nauvoo. And it becomes the biggest city in Illinois. Nauvoo is bigger than Chicago at the time. And the person who did, and at the time, Joseph Smith starts running for president. And when he's assassinated, he's the first presidential candidate in American history to ever be assassinated. There hasn't been a presidential candidate yet who's assassinated before Joseph Smith. And he's running for president of the United States with good money, probably maybe because of Electoral College, potential to maybe even win, right? Things are changing because the anti-Mason party are there, the Whig party are there, the Jacksonian Masonic Democrats are there. But the anti-Masons join with the Whig party and create the Republican Party. And let's just say James Polk wins in 1844 because Joseph Smith dies in 44, so he can't run for president. But he's running on a campaign of abolition. He wants to abolish slavery. So you've got this guy in all the pictures of him. He's got a top hat, remember, because he's using a top hat to read with these stones.
That's the key, yeah.
Yeah, and he's got this top hat, and he's running on abolition. And he gets killed. He gets assassinated. Now, 15 years later, the guy who was in Illinois, who let them move to Illinois, to Commerce, runs for president with a top hat on a campaign of abolition. And his name is Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln.
Me out right now.
Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, just wait till you start looking into the Society of Cincinnati. Shout out JJ Vance. Yeah, it's gonna screw you all up. You'll know it's all the Mormons.
I always have to mention too that as the first American president, as the guy that basically founded the newest Christian denomination that has been successful, at least out of all the different ones that have jumped up. But he also was killed in Carthage, and Carthage was
Like
supposed to be the
Hannibal.
final. He was supposed to be the final resting place of all non-Christian religions and gods and thinkings. And just the fact that Joseph Smith is married to the lady that was married to William Morgan, who exposed the Masonic secrets, and then Joseph Smith gets accused of exposing Masonic secrets and having ties to secret mystery schools and sort of like old world thinking, and then he gets sacrificed in Carthage in order for the rest of the American presidents to, maybe run until Abraham Lincoln. Yeah.
And who was sacrificed
good Joe.
in Roman Carthage? Hannibal, right, in the ancient Egyptian Carthage. And Hannibal means son of Baal, which means son of God, right? So the son of God, it's a little sync for you there.
Why do you say Baal, like Baal, or what are you saying?
Yeah, Hannibal. Hannibal was the general
but the
who fought against the
part
Romans.
of Hannibal is from
It's Baal. It's Baal, yeah.
It's the same etymological root of
that's why his name Hannibal's name meant son of God, son of Baal. That was
I'm just considering the Masonic trinity of Jabalan and how that might connect somehow. But
there's definitely, if you start reading like the names of some of the people, because that's when they start using biblical names and naming everyone. But Joseph Smith in Carthage, there was another point to that. Basically, the sacrifice of Joseph Smith or the murder and assassination of Joseph Smith is pretty soon after he more or less officially becomes part of the Freemasons, because he wasn't technically, his brother was, but he wasn't a Freemason for years while he was doing this.
He rose to a Master Mason in one day. And not only that, he was fingered for this murder.
They fingered him in jail? No, I'm just kidding.
Right? I mean, he was there with his brother. We know how Mormons are. It's all incest. But no, I don't know. What they did say is Good Joe from Vermont was implicated in the disappearance of William Morgan. So just saying.
Does it? I'm sorry. Isn't this the thing that Trump always likes to bring up, and that people are like, that's so left field, Hannibal Lecter. When he talks about Hannibal Lecter, the Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs, just to be clear, like whenever I hear this, it kind of reminds me of the YMCA thing, where the argument is that the reason why they keep playing YMCA is because Guantanamo Bay was originally a YMCA, and so it's like some kind of subliminal statement. Because the Hannibal Lecter thing, I'm like, dude, like if you know Silence of the Lambs, like they're in Memphis, right, Tennessee, but like the Memphis, Egypt. The amount of symbolism in Silence of the Lambs that has to do with ancient Egypt is like out of control. Like the whole thing, and the thing that they find in the back of the throat, the little bug that's on the movie poster, whatever. That's not the name that they give it. Isn't the real name of the bug, but it's referencing when the pharaoh would die, they would stick this thing in the back of his throat, and there's a tool or whatever that they use to open his mouth to retrieve the thing. It's like the obelisk when they go, the shot of with the sun and the obelisk when they go to Washington in Silence of the Lambs, and the idea of the I think it's said in Zeitgeist. It may have been one of the things that may or not be true, but it doesn't matter when you're dealing with people using symbolism, where they would say that who is it? Not Osiris, but is it Horus? Is it Osiris? The land, shepherd symbolism that it was associated with Jesus was also like hook or by crook is like associated with Horus or whatever. I forget how this works, but yeah. Anyway, no, I don't know. I'm kind of on a tangent here. But there's something correspondent of like whenever he says Hannibal Lecter, and I'm just like, is he like? It's like it's. I mean, we're talking about somebody. Were they foolish or were they genius? Like I don't even know. Like there's an association of the fool and kind of like the deity at the same time. So I don't know.
It's possible that his brother broke his oath and was secretly telling Joseph, and his father might have broken his oath and secretly was telling Joseph things, gearing him up, preparing him, knowing things without keeping a promise of keeping it secret. And he says, but it's not until after his Master Masonry raising that he introduces the anointing ritual and starts saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. And all of a sudden a bunch of Masons are like, hey, we seen that one before. He's like, you're not allowed to say that. You keep it quiet.
You can't say it, because if you say it, then you're exposing it.
He probably already knew anyways, because look at all the family members that were selectmen from Topsfield. Like, they are high up selectmen. So I'm sure that they passed it down, because even Lucy Mack Smith is in her letters joking about talking to Abraxas and Susang and blah, blah. So
because it wasn't as big of a deal when everyone was a Freemason. And that's kind of the funny thing. Joseph Smith said, we're going to build a community. Like, because today Mormons have a thing where you're not allowed to tell people that aren't Mormon these secrets. But if you lived in Joseph's world, his Zion,
the Order of
Enoch,
everyone was Enoch.
If everyone knew all of the secrets, then you wouldn't have to keep the secrets from each other, because you'd all know the secrets. And that's kind of what America was like. I mean, not everywhere, but in these communities before the anti-Mason hysteria. If everyone was a Mason, then the whole town knew what was going on.
When we say religion, it's really misleading. Literally, it was like, because what is the stated intentions of the roots of Freemasonry is to illuminate humanity. So like, there's this argument when it comes to like that, because there's like a secret that's like an open secret that is in the nature of reality or whatever, like that's the esoteric, but like revelation is to reveal, you know what I mean? Like, and so you can see that there's kind of a disjoint between people who like their secret clubs and like their secrets, and people that are just like, the real, you know, path is to just share and, you know, expose all the stuff that's hidden. So
a lot of these lodges were actually pretty small at the time. You'd have hundreds of lodges, and a lot of lodges would have like 300 people. But by the time Joseph Smith dies, his brother being a big part of the Nauvoo Lodge, and there's several important, the Springfield, back to the Homer's Club in the Simpsons thing. There's the Springfield Lodge and there's the Nauvoo Lodge, have like 1,500 members. Some crazy, like for a lodge at that time. They were huge. And there's a bunch of secrets that lodges hold. They have regalia, but there's a lot of question. Did Joseph have access to the secrets of the regalia of the lodge? And did they steal it? And this is a big thing. Did they bring it out so they could put it in the temple? And
if they make their own system, right, then they can expose things. If they were as Freemasons to like try and expose them, they could lose their life in the process. But if they start their own separate system and replicate, his
talisman was wrong. Yeah,
I'm tripping out on the thing with the forgery, because like when you replicate something, like this is an argument that Brian Eno of all people used to make, where he said, if you wanted to recreate a Jackson Pollock, how much more difficult is that than to produce the Jackson Pollock? Like the amount of skill that goes into replicating something and then changing it a little bit how you want, you know, like that is a incredible ability. So, but if you look at Mormonism, I've heard this argument that it's like, this is like, oh, just an extension of Freemasonry. Is it? Or is it that they're replicating it with slight variations, the system of Freemasonry, and putting themselves into a position where they can share things to people who otherwise wouldn't have access to it? You guys are pointing out, including what would have been minorities in America, and like, and this whole like, isn't that kind of like the real American way, though? You know, like,
his whole thing was that all these other churches were fractions of the real church, right? And so he had to take a little bit from the Catholics and the Orthodox and the Protestants and build the church.
So it's kind of philosophical.
The same thing with Freemasons. He's like, the Freemasons have some of it, but there's more to it, and I'm going to tell you the rest of it.
There's been multiple prophets that say we are the only church on the face of the earth that have true Masonry, first of all. And second of all, he got his revelation from knowledge on the fall equinox, dressed in all black, talking to an angel, just summoning things with parchments, just like Martinists do. I'm telling you, there is something to this. The Martinists only do that in the spring and the fall, but here's the difference between a regular Mason and a Martinist is they're a practicing order, which I don't know, you probably already know this, but the practicing order part has been wiped off for the most part, unless you're in these little groups, right? He tried to integrate that again, just like John Dee would say, hey, we can have science and we can have mystic and we can put it together. That's very much a Joseph thing.
Right.
I gotta point out too that the real secrets of Masonry, I think, it's more about here's how you can formulaically make an impression on somebody to actually drive something into their memories, and here's some specific ways in which we can foster memories of the members. Like you can't join unless you can prove that you can do all sorts of like memory acrobatics essentially, and that these two things, that's where Joseph Smith was probably like, hey, nice little formula you got there. I bet you I could spice it up a little bit and it would have the same impact. And I think that he was right because, and even more so because Mormons are kind of completely kept in the dark. At least if you join the
100.
Masons, you kind of have a feeling that at some point something mystical or woo-woo is going to happen to you, right? Like whatever that. But as a Mormon, you're growing up, and it's like all you ever eat is like unflavored, unseasoned yogurt nonstop, and then one day you get a chocolate pudding, and
Tahine.
then
More like a
again,
curry.
right? And then it goes right back to, and for the rest of your life, you're gonna like, man, I remember exactly where I was at that day that I got the chocolate pudding, and I feel that was part of the formula.
I feel like that's because other people, whether it be magical orders or Masons or whatever, will use drugs a lot of times to enhance certain things, whereas Mormons use fracturing the psyche to do it. And I'm telling you, that's what they do. They do it by freaking you the F out. And I know because I was there and that's what happened to me. And I feel angry that I was lied to because I would never promise things. And like when I promise something, or I say something, it's not that I don't keep secrets good. It's the fact that they lied to me and made me take something on that isn't the truth. They told me this was about going to heaven. If they had told me just a little bit, right? Like you said, you don't know everything, but just a little bit beforehand, I know I would not have done that because I wouldn't have been prepared.
But how are you supposed to be traumatized if you know what's coming?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. We'll bring back the drugs. That's ridiculous.
The trauma is valuable, probably to some extent. I mean, this is a funny thing of what Paranoid American just about Freemasonry. Like he basically compared it to John Grinder and Bandler's Structure of Magic and NLP, right? Like, it's like so the Masonry comes from Santa Cruz or Utah.
But then you can opt in and you can opt out. You just said it. That's the core distinction. Otherwise, it's a cult. That's a difference between a cult and just a religious organization. Can you opt in and opt out?
I don't know. I
think they were worried.
You can opt in and opt out of People's Temple technically, and of Heaven's Gate technically.
Not of Mormons.
That's not like Heaven's Gate though. You're not.
But they don't. Do they do so? Like I'm listening to this. I'm thinking about what are the distinctions between Mormonism and Scientology. Because with Scientology, if you go against it, you're a dissenter. This is going to ruin your freaking life. And people show up in Hollywood and various, places where they think if they don't join this, they're not gonna go anywhere.
Well, I think they're worse.
And so
live in Utah, same.
Well, that's what I was about to say.
Brigham's
the
thing
status
was more
element is the same in that way. So I don't know how they treat it. I mean,
Joseph Smith didn't say
I lost my whole family. I lost my whole family.
Really? Just like that.
Joseph Smith didn't say that you were gonna have to go to hell ever, right? Unless you became a son of perdition. Brigham Young really pushed this idea that you're going to become a son of perdition if you don't keep with the faith, that the way the church is controlled. And by moving to Utah, he was able to completely control your family.
If you break your promise, you go to outer darkness. If like me, I am viewed as going to outer darkness with murderers. Period. Because I broke my oath that I didn't even know about. Not even my grandma, not even my family would tell me what was going to happen.
There's something called efficiency of breach, I think, in contract law. So you're probably okay. You're coming with me to X Church. Don't worry. We're going straight to Kola. I'll talk to these people for you.
We'll talk to them. Okay.
David, you were asking what's the difference between Scientology and Mormonism, and because I kind of see them in progressive steps. In my mind, the answer is 150 years because Mormonism was one of the first religions that acknowledged, different animals or creatures living on the moon. Like it was a very forward thing. They were talking about planets, not in a classical alchemical sense. Although I'm sure Joseph Smith had that in mind, but they were actually talking
like a sci-fi sense,
like
Amish Quaker,
wandering around on the very, very sci-fi. And then
Quakers are like horizontal government; they don't have any presbyteros, so they're all. He liked them,
their CIA covers into.
But that's exactly the point. It's like Mormonism was the first sci-fi-esque religion, and then I think Scientology kind of just doubles down on that, throws a little Crowley in, throws a little Jack Parsons in.
But Crowley was super influenced by Joseph Smith as well. I
think somebody thinks I'm kidding. Like they asked, "What do you mean I lost my whole family?" I mean, every piece of extended family I have no longer speaks to me except my immediate children, husband, and my mother. That's what I mean.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're worried that they'll get tainted by by Heidi.
So a friend of mine who was raised with Scientology, we've had a lot of discussions around the particulars. My one thing that he communicated to me was that he felt that a lot of the practices that he was raised with and that he witnessed had tremendous value. The only place where he really sees them as problematic is the attribution to L. Ron Flubbard, that it's all about whatever the fuck with this society. He's like, because the thing in itself, and he would argue that a lot of these things, that the practices he would see in religious organizations in general, even just like in a Christian church, like you have this ecstatic kind of like, transformation that takes place, but now you're attributing it to this specific thing and you can't own it. It can't just be yours. Like, oh, so he would argue that. But then at one point I told him that my takeaway is kind of I don't know this in any absolute terms, but kind of my takeaway is that it seems like one of the primary functions of Scientology is a means of going through society and kind of weeding out who the people are who are most susceptible to, speaking of NLP, hypnosis, so that they can be used for various psyops. And even like, what is the nature of a psyop, like, is open to
By the way,
interpretation.
Cerebral Organoid brought up that John Dee's birthday is today, in case we forgot to bring that up. Yeah, happy birthday, John Dee.
Awesome. We're going to talk about him.
Cerebral Organoid's birthday as well. So
also, but to your point, David, they have the most recruits out of Utah, and especially at BYU and the U of U for 3-letter agencies. And within 30 miles of my home, I have the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, Air Force Base, and the IRS. So there's that.
Can I also, is it crazy that this is a SyncTank episode? We didn't intentionally plan this to be on John Dee.
You didn't?
This is absolutely not. Right, Heidi? Like we were just talking about doing a show on.
Just talked about
I thought that's why you were doing this.
And and it just worked out. Is that not insane that we just happened to pick his birthday?
He's like, this is the only day I have. And I'm like, okay.
He's like, dude, let me in. Yeah, see, he's with us right now.
Wherever I walk and I look back, what is it, like on the beach, and I look down and I see John Dee's footprints.
Yeah, that's when he was carrying you.
Yeah, that's what was up. No, that was Edward Kelly. He does the work. No, just kidding.
It was actually Edward Kelly carrying John Dee, who was then carrying me.
Yeah.
What about where does Bruno fit in?
Right.
You guys hip to Bruno? No. I don't know enough about it. My housemate Bill is
Saint Bruno.
Yeah. Do you know about the occultist Bruno?
Giordano Bruno?
Is that? Yeah, I think so. That sounds right. Yeah, I'm not. This isn't. I'm not privy to a lot of this stuff. I'm learning more on this episode than I almost ever do. So I appreciate that, guys. But yeah,
what fun.
Astronomer, right?
Yeah, connects to John Dee in a variety of ways. Apparently,
so he had some thoughts about the shape of the Earth and the placement of the sun versus the Earth. He died a day before I was born.
Burned at the stake.
Give or take some years. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget who it was. I thought it was Eliphas Levi, but I think I got corrected that one of these guys, it may have been Bruno, when they were burned at the stake, they basically, like, last words, were like, well, shit, if I knew it was going to end like this, I wouldn't have been so veiled in my speech. I wouldn't have tried to, like encrypt everything. I would have just said it because here it is.
I mean, he denied the Trinity. He was on par with the Mormons deny the Trinity as well. I mean, not deny, but like.
Well, don't mention. Don't forget to mention transubstantiation, which means that if you do not eat the flesh and drink the blood during Catholic Mass, then you also deserve to be burnt at the stake. And this, I mean, literally, this was what ended up creating him as a heretic, was his denial to take transubstantiation and to admit to the Trinity. So I mean, they were
Jesus meant something else.
They were hardcore 3 centuries ago.
Right. It wasn't just talking to frogs.
Mormons were hardcore, 2 centuries ago?
Well, and not only that, I effed around and found out, and I sent this to Paranoid American, but apparently if you're related to any English court, which I definitely am, I went on stupidfamilysearch.org camping like a dum-dum, and John Dee is my 16th grade uncle. So that's fun.
That's not bad.
Paranoid said he wouldn't get on.
No,
I went to go and look, and the amount of information they wanted, and I was like, wait a minute, what are they doing with this? And I already
Right.
know.
I told
got
you to
tracked
tell him
all the
you're
way
an
back to
apostate.
Jesus. I got tracked right back to Jesus.
There
and
you
Mary
go.
Magdalene. I was like, that's
We just
great.
call him Josh in my family.
Yeah, that's what's up,
Yeshua.
Uncle Josh.
But we
Jesus or just what you got some, maybe
Straight to
Mexico.
straight to Jesus.
That
Jesus
Christ.
and Mary
Okay.
Magdalene, straight up.
Okay.
Yeah, through the Sinclairs and everything, through the Spanish side of my family. But
I'm
and the
Merovingian
Fitzgeralds.
and all Bourbon and Medici. I'm all kinds of weird.
I'm a little Merovingian. I'm a little rock and roll. But
It's a
also
little weird.
Hiram Page is important to this because you brought up the seer stone, and so this idea that there were other seer stones. So Hiram Page is the one of the 8 witnesses of the process, right? Where Joseph Smith is unveiling, and he's like, "Everyone sit behind this giant tent because you don't want to get blinded by the light here." And I'm going to explain to you what this Enochian, reformed Egyptian, is really saying. And Hiram Page says, "Well, I have my own seer stone, so let me use it to see what things actually say, from my perspective, because he's also practicing magic." And then Joseph Smith has this, revelation that that other seer stones are bad, and then it's evil, and then it needs to be taken to the river and smashed into powder and destroyed, right? Like, so you can't use any seer stone except for the Urim and Thummim that he had, right? And so that's the other thing. The seer stones, he connects to the chest plate of the priesthood of the first temple. And so he also says he's a direct descendant of Joseph, who is of the second wife of Israel, of his first love, Rebecca, instead of Leah, right? Mm-hmm. And so he says, okay, Joseph, who went into Egypt, and this is his connection, even beyond Moses, is like directly to Joseph, and he has this special seer stone. But that Hiram's was evil, right?
Right. Well, this also then has to do with the interpretation of dreams, right? I mean, dream interpretation was Joseph's superpower, right? So I can see his resonance, or him kind of attributing what he's doing to. Yeah.
This Urim and Thummim blew my mind, because when they took this away and they said, okay, they kind of phased it out and then popped the hat out of South Park, I went, this is a lie, because I'd been raised my whole life like, that's a lie, don't believe it. And then the prophet does a photo op with it, and I went, are you serious right now? Like, they said it was this my whole life, and now it isn't. So
weird. Yeah,
the angels
have you seen the picture? Hold on, let me pull that up.
The angels took the Urim and Thummim back because they needed them. Just FYI.
I saw the Matt Stone and Trey Parker's production of the Book of Mormon, and when I went out in the middle of it for a cigarette break, I'm talking to this guy, and who tells me that he didn't know what he was in for, and I was like, how you like it? Well, he's like, well, I'm from the place. I believe it was Africa. He was from not just the region, but he's like, I'm from there. Like, he was like, no one told me that was what I was going. I was like, are you offended? And he was like, well, I would be, but they didn't say anything that wasn't true, or they haven't said anything that's not true. So he's like, I can't be offended at that, I was like,
General Butt Naked is real, right? Yeah. And apparently Trey Parker went to Africa, to Uganda, to do research for the book. Not that he was trying to make it like completely authentic anyway, but it's weird. It is weirdly authentic.
Well, wait, who was the guy you were talking to? A Mormon, or just from the area?
No, he's not a Mormon. He just happened to be from there. Like, he went to this show, and we're standing there smoking, and he's like, dude, I'm tripping out right now, because that's like where I'm from, like literally exactly. And I was like, is that it? And then the friend who I went with, she had gone to see it prior, and she saw a bunch of like a row of Mormons who went to go see it, who were there near her. And same deal. She asked them, well, were you offended? And they go, well, we would be, but they didn't say anything that wasn't true.
I assume that one wasn't on a smoke break, though. That one was like,
no, that was just there at the seats. But yeah. But yeah, it's the same. But they said the same thing in both cases. You have the place, and then you have a row of Mormons. At least in their interpretation and their experience, they're not, this is basically
it was super
what it
offensive when it came out. The church forbid us to watch it. They had a big fit about it, and said that none of this is true. Come to find out, all of it is true. So I mean, that was a lot too.
I didn't really find like the musical to be that offensive either. That's the other thing. Like generally it's like it's about a kid who doesn't know the Book of Mormon very well. And so he goes and he tries to adapt their culture.
But the subtext that's not so subtle is that Lord of the Rings and Star Wars put together, and this is his own thing that he's made up, is the equivalent of Mormonism. They just made it up. So it's like they're like, oh well, so Trey Parker, Matt Stone, that if you were to find offense in it as a Mormon, I would imagine it's the downplaying of its origin, saying, well, some guys just made
I don't think he made it up. I think he channeled angels, just like John Dee.
I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing.
Yeah,
that.
no,
I'm
I get
saying
it.
that what would be the argument for somebody being offended by that production would be the implication at the end that they can start their own religion, because what's the difference anyway?
Right. No, I caught it. I was making a joke.
But I mean, the joke actually gets kind of weird, because when you're saying Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, these are things that one could make the argument that they're kind of channeled themselves from J.R. Tolkien, who was a Catholic, and George
studied
Lucas,
the Cotton Codex.
So well studied, and the what is the book, The Power of Myth, from Joseph Campbell, and all this kind of stuff. So you could say, oh well, it's taken from these other places. So the
Lord of the Rings is from the Cotton Codex of Beowulf.
Mormon would just say, oh, that's the way it's treated, like it's just an episode of South Park. They're just making it up, and we walk away, and it's just a big joke.
We only really have the Beowulf.
Deeper, you're like, wait a second here, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, there's something to this, you know.
Lord of the Rings is the one, like we wouldn't have Beowulf in presentable form if it weren't for the J.R.R. Tolkien was studying the Cotton Codex and the Swedish library copy, which was destroyed in the Swedish-British War, right? And so all of that stuff would have been lost anyway. And so whether he's channeling it or also was really deeply researching Anglo-Frisian, Saxon, Indo-Aryan mythology to put that together. And the same thing with Star Wars. Star Wars has this weird Kabbalistic pre-First Temple look at Judaism for sure. Like the Yudai, the Jedi, Yoda, all of these things are very Hebrew. Yeah, the 12 parsecs and the Kabbalah, unless 12 parsecs, the Kessel
Run.
The
equivalent of theosophy, because he's taking
Solomon
places at once to build this thing, just like J.R.R. Tolkien is as an anthropologist. But like Yoda in Hebrew is one who knows. It's the same root as the tree of knowledge, da'at. You're like Yoda, who's one who knows. And then Yoda in Sanskrit, we've talked about this before, but it's so freaking weird, I gotta say it. In Sanskrit is a great warrior. Yoda, it's almost pronounced the same way. So you're like, Yoda, great warrior, Yoda, one who knows. What does Luke say to Yoda when he first meets him? He says, I'm looking for a great warrior. So he's looking for Yoda in Sanskrit. And what does Yoda respond him with? Wars do not make one great, making him in Hebrew one who knows. So he is both a great warrior and one who knows, because he knows that wars do not make one great. And he is a great warrior. So snap. Yeah.
Anyway. It's solid.
Absolutely.
But have you guys seen the Book of Mormon in person? Or
I saw it.
You can find it online now from people who have just filmed it. I mean, it's not high quality, but at least you can watch it. I mean, that's the problem with Broadway productions, is that you don't get to see them recorded until 2020. They started recording them.
And by the way, there is a movie called Yoda from 1992 about a savior who rescues a monastery from sorcerers practicing black magic.
There you go.
Perfect. That's pretty good. But do you want to talk about Dee more, or did you already get into Dee more?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, definitely. Because so many people always say, really, they don't know. That whenever I have people ask me, like, what does this have to do with John D. Rockefeller? And I'm like, no.
Well, I mean, in terms of just like having things sync directly in your memory, the one that I always remember of John Dee was that he was the cuck in the little like try sandwich between John Dee, Edward Kelly, and John Dee's wife Jane Dee, where Edward Kelly would come over. Edward Kelly would talk to an angel called Uriel, and then Uriel would tell Edward Kelly, you got to sleep with John Dee's wife right now, otherwise this transmission stops. And just, I guess he must have had a way with words in order to describe, hey John, this isn't me speaking, this is the angel telling me what to say. So don't be offended. And then this ends up happening. And this becomes
Jane was way younger than John. That's a big thing.
John was about 70, Jane was in her 30s, and Edward Kelly was in his 30s. So the 70-year-old is like, hey, 30-year-old, come hang out with me and my wife, and I'm going to sit back and let you do a lot of the stuff. I'm just going to describe some things.
I'm going to sit back and watch while you do the...
It's kind of like he was... I'm going to...
Why you make the baby. Why you make the baby. Because that's what happened. You know that, right? Kelly's baby. No? You didn't know? There was a baby from that.
Edward Kelly. Yeah.
Oh, Edward Kelly's baby. Yeah, you make the baby, Edward. I'm too old. Yeah, there was a baby from that whole fun time.
I'm trying to figure out John Dee John Dee is said to be a model of in Marlowe's Faust, he's like referencing John Dee is the argument, but I thought that they actually had a relationship. I'm trying to remember who Marlowe actually connected with that was connected to John Dee. I mean, this is so like these are all like, you know, rich, influential occultists, right? They all kind of know each other and of each other at least. But do you guys are you hip to that? I mean,
vaguely. I did recently go to Leipzig, so I was just in the town where Faust. The other thing is, I didn't think about this, but Kelly and Keller, right? Because Keller is basement, so there's a basement there in Leipzig where Faust met with the devil, right? And that's supposed to be the town, and allegedly that actually occurred to some degree for Wolfgang von Goethe in Leipzig, right? And Leipzig's also where the war really ended. So at the end of the war, we think of like different places in World War II, like the final bombings and everything like that. But there's this Napoleon tomb for the fallen soldiers from the late 18th century, and that was the final holdout for the Reich, and that's where they finally, like, you know, defeated Germany. They had to find somebody who would sign a surrender document, essentially. But the final battle happened on Hitler's birthday. They're essentially the same place as the Faustian bargain took place, just above.
Okay. So here's the thing. It feels very relatable to me, like Oppenheimer and Jack Parsons. Like, how did these people never meet? They're so close to each other in proximity and in the area of what they're doing. You have a rocket scientist, and it's like seems so obvious, but the same thing can be said for Marlowe and John Dee. Same time period, same social circle, but no documentation that proves that they ever met in person. So, but it's kind of weird. You're like, they're in the same social circle, they're in the same area, they're in the same age, like, but when it comes to occultism and people meeting each other, why would that be recorded? Why would we know that? Like, why would that, you know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't have to announce that necessarily, you know. But I've wondered about the coordination there.
Well, I'm not sure about Marlowe for sure, but I know that, you know, he based his Devil Faustus on Goethe's Faust story, which is supposed to be somewhat true, right? And Kelly did go through Germany, and so it's probable that he spent time at some point in Leipzig.
Goethe's Faust story changes the ending from Marlowe, who initially wrote it, right? So the original.
Oh, it was Marlowe first.
Yeah. And it's actually kind of like tried to make it more rosy, like it doesn't have this eternal damnation at the end in the same way. He actually gets redeemed, and it's actually a more positive version, oddly enough. But yeah. And but the thing is that it includes the original Marlowe version includes specific magical stuff, including the magical squares and all these things that John Dee would have been so hip to. It almost seems like he was his source, like, or one of his sources for being as accurate as he could be, but there's no proof that they met. So
Marlowe based his version, though. So Goethe based his version on Marlowe's maybe, but Marlowe based his version on the anonymous story of Faust, which is written by a German anonymous author that comes even earlier.
Okay.
Well, and Kindy comes to play. Oh, Kindy comes to play for Dee, you know, so as well. It was inspired by Al Kindy. So
Historia von D. Johann Fausten, the chapbook, the first Faust book, a chapbook of stories concerning the life of Johann Jorge Faust, written by an anonymous German author, published by Johann Spies in 1540 in Frankfurt, in 1587 and became the main source for the play, The Tragic History of Dr. Faustus by Marlowe, and Goethe's closet play, Faust. So it allegedly is written by an anonymous author that came first, right?
Far out. Yeah. Is that anonymous author John Dee?
That's a good enough question for me, right?
Oh, who knows?
But Kelly spent time in Germany, right? And he got his ears clipped. That's the story.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Huh. Weird. So
the ear clipping is the way that they would denote a charlatan usually, and just to throw the Trump reference out there.
Right.
Oh, I didn't even do that one yet. Thank you. I like that a lot.
Right. Well, we're on that tip because of the comic book coming up with the Golden Bough and Kubrick stuff, because the idea of playing in, like, looking at the archetypal fool and the green man as like the symbolism around it. Crowley makes the assertion that in modern times that would be represented as the quote unquote gangster boss. So we're drawing a parallel between like this, this figure that gets so imbued in the culture, who's actually supposed to be the one overthrowing it, but everything is so it's the one ritualistically killing the king and then marrying the king's daughter, and like doing this whole playing out this whole turning everything on its head and kind of like making the last first, so to speak. But because of the way that things have been set up, which is like kind of like all in these reversals, where instead of killing the king and having the humility to allow the trimming back of the royal tree, so to speak, because they insist on being so greedy and whatever, that we have to the culture itself has to experience the repercussions of that reversal, where instead of killing the king, they're celebrating the killing of the challenger of the king, and then being like, we got another year in power, midsummer sets us free, and then we have to keep going through this ridiculous cycle.
It seems
Uriel,
out of those people, it seems Edward Kelly could also classify as a gangster king, because he was rolling with some like royal connections, but he was also the bad boy. Like he would show up, you couldn't hide it. He was also known as the cropped philosopher, I think, because of the ear. So it was hard to mistake him when he came into town.
So Uriel is associated with confirmation and sacrament. So also transubstantiation is associated with Uriel, and Uriel is also in the secret book of John, like the Gnostic book of John, the master of demons who helps Yaldabaoth create Adam, which Adam is God according to Brigham Young, right?
So that had to happen. Trump had to get shot in the ear in the exact same way of the clipping of the ear symbolism. That's kind of crazy. Is that the idea that like they almost ritualistically killed the king, but now he's just got the clipped ear denoting him for what, in that way? That's crazy.
I can see it. It's also interesting to me, I mean, the idea that Yaldabaoth created Adam, because that's like a big thing that some of the like a Kingston clan and some of the other fringe groups of Mormon, like Ogden Kraut, right, talk about, is why Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man, right? The Son of Man being the son of Adam. So when he's the son of God, he's the son of Adam, who's supposedly God, right? That's a
right. But keep in mind that the Greek from the gospel, where he says, because Jesus isn't speaking in court, right? So he's being silent, and then suddenly he says, the Son of Man will come in the clouds, and is describing the way that Jerusalem will fall. We're supposed to believe that this text is like 40 years, give or take, from before Jerusalem got sacked by Rome, Titus Caesar doing his father's bidding, Vespasian Caesar. But if you look at the text of Josephus Flavius, who's the only other surviving text from Judea at that time, besides the text of a Roman botanist, the way that Titus Caesar arriving in Jerusalem is described in his account of it is the exact same wording in Greek that Jesus uses in the gospel to describe the Son of Man. We're supposed to assume, Christians are supposed to assume that when he's describing the Son of Man, that he's referring to himself in the third person. But apparently, if you look at the Greek, it doesn't indicate that. He's talking about somebody that's going to come after him. He says, there's one who baptized by water, referring to John the Baptist, and the one who will baptize by fire, there's this argument that you could make the argument that the gospel was actually written after Jerusalem was sacked, because how are you going to prove that? And then how easy is it to make a prophecy of what's going to happen when it's already happened? But the fact that the same exact terminology is used, not just the Son of Man, but even beyond that, like the come in the clouds thing and all of this in the Greek is verbatim to the description of Titus Caesar, who is the son of God, as Vespasian Caesar is being treated as God, because everywhere the Romans would like conquer, they would make everyone worship Caesar as their God. And these people were super stubborn. The only descriptor that we have of whatever the Sicarii were, like the Jewish rebels who were there, we don't really know what they were like, other than that they were equated with goats, because they were so stubborn. They would not do, we had 100-year war or occupation where they just wouldn't submit to Rome the way that these other places would. And so there's the argument that the New Testament was actually used in part as not just the New Testament, but the gospel specifically was written as a means to get these people to submit to Rome as their like to basically take a knee to Rome. And that Josephus, who was a top Jewish scholar, was adopted into the Flavian court with this task of like recreating what we saw in the Old Testament to give them their new religion, which would also explain why you'd have that has these redeeming aspects to it, because it's written by somebody who actually does have some degree of intention in the midst of being forced in this position where he has to do Rome's bidding, right? So that's a whole giant rabbit hole topic, but I think it's applicable here. Whenever somebody brings up the Son of Man, I'm immediately either going there or thinking of the painting and Manson's thing, because that's where the Beatles got the green apple symbolism for their record label. And then Charles Manson is like, I'm the Son of Man, man's son, and whatever. Anyway, sorry.
I got another Joseph Smith connection here too with Edward Kelly, because Edward Kelly was a young guy that was making an impression on the older crowd, being John Dee. And one of the qualifications that made John Dee even seek him out is because Ed Kelly claimed to have this red powder that if he mixed it into a solution, it would basically become a philosopher's stone and become one aspect of the philosopher's stone. And what he would use in tandem with this red powder, or the solution that he mixed it with, it says that he and a certain John Blokely were then led by a spiritual creature at Northwick Hill, which is the exact same sort of practice that Joseph Smith would usually get into. Is that
a drug?
Well, I don't know. That part is unknown. If Edward Kelly was ingesting this, or if he was using it in some other capacity.
Yeah, I wonder what the red powder was.
The Templars have like a whole thing about the powdered gold.
What's in the box, man?
What is that? What is the Templar thing with the what?
They say that it's like this special gold that's in a powder form, and it doesn't weigh much because they couldn't carry it around. They had to get a really heavy box, and that's kind of the whole Ark of the Covenant stuff. So, I mean, I'm sure Paranoid American or Andreas.
That's the whole the Ormus thing, but also that's why it was interesting when we talked about the regalia that would have been stolen from the lodges, because if Joseph Smith, who had all kinds of cool relics, including mummies that they thought were Joseph in Egypt's mummy, right? Yuya's mummy. He had like 8 mummies, and several of them were burned and destroyed, and one of them at least ended up in Niagara Falls, right? The museum, there still is one of the mummies from Joseph Smith's collection, but that's where the papyrus came from, where he says he's got the Book of Abraham and everything, like this piece of papyrus that there's only a small fragment of it left, allegedly, because there was the fire in the Chicago fire in the 1870s, which destroyed the library, or Freemasons stole a bunch of this stuff. Who knows, right? Like got a bunch of the stuff out of the Chicago library.
You've seen National Treasure, you get it.
And this is, National Treasure,
just like Notre Dame, started on fire, get the shit out.
A lot of Mormons worked on National Treasure, and there's a reason why the glasses that they use, the Benjamin Franklin glasses, are essentially the way Mormons thought that Joseph Smith had his glasses to read the Urim and Thummim, right? Like there's special stones for looking through to read Enochian magic. But the Holy Grail might have been in Illinois in one of the lodges, because it's so central to the United States, is one of the safest places the lodges brought to the middle there,
Doesn't
and that maybe Joseph Smith had the Holy Grail, and that this was the reason they wanted to kill him and destroy the church and take the thing.
okay.
Now
And it
Trump
was-
has it.
last
No,
little
just
bit
kidding.
there, yeah. Or Dalen Oaks, because Dalen Oaks was supposed to be
Yeah.
after John D. Rockefeller resigned from Nixon's presidency and Gerald Ford became president. He was considered to be the Supreme Court figurehead, and Ronald Reagan even almost made him the Supreme Court figurehead, except they chose Sandra Day O'Connor instead. But he was almost going to be in charge of the Supreme Court, or one of the main appointees to the Supreme Court. Before now, he's going to be the prophet. But Joseph Smith, when the Freemasons were super upset and Brigham Young takes the church and goes to Utah, Freemasons banned lodges in Utah until after the death of Brigham Young. Essentially, they said the entire state cannot have a lodge in it until after he died. So,
and they just barely made it so that you could join a lodge and still have an active temple recommend within, I think, the last 5 years, because they weren't supposed to, technically.
Interesting.
Right?
I mean, I've definitely known. I mean, I think they have a thing about secret combinations, but I've met quite a few. There's several rather open Freemasons.
It was always allowed. It was always allowed. It was just kind of one of those things where I think they were like, keep your damn mouth shut, maybe.
Well, yeah, I think that they basically only after Brigham Young, like Brigham Young had his own idea of a lodge and his own secret combinations, right? But Freemasonry was really upset at Brigham Young. There was definitely some sort of a schism, East and West schism going on between Utah and the rest of,
Well, they have vaults just like the Vatican. I mean, just so people know, like there are many things, and including Old World Micmac. He sent me a reel about the copper scrolls where they say flat out the Mormons have a piece of these, and that's due to Jason Mack, Lucy Mack Smith's brother, being with the Micmacs, and he sent me this information. I can't claim it as my own. So anyways, yeah, they have multiple things that I think are very important, not only for Freemasonry, but other artifacts and whatnot. So
hey, you know what? Something about your guy with the salamander story and the forgery stuff and all of this. I'm getting like a sense of like that. I would argue that Zacharias Sitchin seems like he's almost like an insider agent in a sense, or was, because like his office at the UN and this whole thing, like it's like, okay, so he produces just a ton of malarkey, right? He just puts it out there in the midst of a bunch of things that the Catholic Church probably really doesn't want people to know, and has to do with the stuff from the Sumerian material that's in their library. Like my rabbi would argue that the Epic of Gilgamesh should imbue the validity of the Old Testament, of specifically Bereshit, because was there a deluge? Like, did this thing happen? And if it did, you'd expect that there would be other accounts of it. Doesn't mean it's the whole earth. No, it means there's a large area. I mean, they didn't have the satellites. They couldn't look at the whole earth. They're like, we experienced this cataclysm. So, but I feel like that was his role. Like, and there's other examples of that. I like to say Kenneth Anger probably did the same with Hollywood Babylon, where they know that there's something here that people are going to be picking up on, and it's likely going to be exposed. So here we'll hire somebody, or
revelation of the method.
Maybe they're just in the service of, for their own religious reasons too. We're going to make it so that if anyone brings up anything related to this topic, they can say, oh, you're referring to crazy Zacharias Sitchin, so whatever. So like that's the real role of a disinformation agent in that way, is just to make it so that this is all baby with the bathwater included in this thing. So, but also you're talking about the Ark of the Covenant. Isn't it said in the Old Testament itself that that's the 10 Commandments and something, Moses' staff or something inside of there? What is the actual biblical argument for what's inside the Ark of the Covenant? I forget. You guys know
there's also obfuscation, just like the Holy Grail is either a cup or a bloodline, right? Like there's constant. It's constantly, and actually there are quotes, and I'm sure Andreas knows this, that they say that the Mormon bloodline is that bloodline. And so,
or at least particular families within the Mormon blood, like not everybody,
not everybody. I mean, these are pioneers.
That's what the Kingston clan, though, basically says, is that they're the bloodline.
That because Joseph Smith was from half Manasseh tribe and half of Ephraim tribe. So bringing them together, he was the perfect child. And that's a lot of
and
why.
further up the totem than Moses, because he comes from Joseph's line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's
There's
what they
also some
say.
stuff there about like because we talked about Mark Hoffman earlier. I think we said that the church didn't buy his stuff directly, but there were some things that they did buy. It just wasn't the Salamander letter. They bought the Anthon transcript, and they also bought Joseph Smith III's blessing, the one from Thomas Bullock. The idea that the church was supposed to be, that Joseph Smith had assigned that his son, once his son Joseph Smith III was old enough, that he should be in charge of the church, which was a major contention because Joseph Smith's son and wife, his first wife, Emma, did not go with Brigham to Utah. They ended up staying behind. And that's where eventually the reorganized church, first you have the Strangites, right? Which was a group that said that Strang was supposed to be the prophet of the church while Joseph Smith was waiting in interim to grow up, his son waiting in interim to grow up. But Joseph Smith III blessings and the Joseph Smith III letters are basically rebukes, saying that Thomas Bullock was rebuking Brigham Young for demanding the burning of all of these letters and all of these blessings that were clearly saying that Joseph Smith III was supposed to become the prophet and not him. And saying, but what's interesting is he didn't actually make it look like he was super upset about it. He basically said, like, I'm not going to destroy my copy of this. Like, I'll accept you, Brigham Young, as the successor because you did look like favorably, like the light shined through you and we all saw you to look like Joseph Smith. So we're all going to believe that God basically put Joseph Smith in you for a day
instead of Rigdon. Yeah. Instead of Sidney Rigdon.
So that's the funny thing. Joseph Smith didn't have 30 kids. He did have like a few kids that died, right?
A lot died.
But yeah, and so there's a whole thing there. A lot of people want to say it was sacrifices.
His firstborn, his dad's firstborn.
They're all Saturn.
But
another one.
I don't think that many of them survived. There's basically Joseph III, a couple sons. One went crazy. He had a daughter.
Yeah,
he also had two adopted kids, right?
So here's who actually spent money on Mark Hoffman on the record: $185,000, but it was secured through a loan from somebody that was taking the money out and was going to buy it to just gift it to the LDS church.
That's just for the Salamander letter, though. So the church itself actually spent $20,000 on the Anton letter. $20,000. They weren't going to buy the Joseph Smith III prophecy blessing, but then he went to the reorganized church because Joseph Smith III did start the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So there's the Mormon church, and there's this whole thing that I always think about, which is like, Joseph Fielding Smith was on a train one time for 3 days with Joseph Smith III, his cousin. And so there was a point in like 1905 after the end of the, there was racism in the RLDS church. They weren't okay with black people, even though Joseph Smith, his father, was. And then there was acceptance of polygamy that was not allowed in the Joseph Smith III never believed his father was a polygamist. Emma Smith denied her entire life and swore on the Bible and on the Book of Mormon, by the way, to the death, to the grave, that he never was a polygamist. So Brigham Young just says, actually, he was secretly
That's great, though. That's great, though.
So then Fanny Alger is this teenager that he lived, like Joseph lived in a house with for a while, and they say he had an affair with her. But when you read the document, if you use modern technology, you can go underneath the word affair and see that they've erased and removed this other word and replaced it with affair. But the word that originally was there was scrape. So he got in a scrape with this young girl, which could mean that it was an affair, but it could also mean like this girl threw herself at him and the family tried to say, we're going to like make you look bad if you don't marry our daughter as well. So he has a spiritual ceiling. Point is that there's not a lot of evidence that Joseph Smith did any kind of polygamy similar to.
Many people say it wasn't.
Well, it's just not the same as what Brigham did. Brigham's polygamy was
Brigham was trying to listen. He had 53, I think, or 55 wives and only like 57 kids. He's not going forth and procreating correctly. Look, we're not doing that. Yeah, not doing his job. I've known many polygamous families. My sister married Warren Jeff's nephew. So it's a whole they're divorced.
Clout.
Yeah, I did a show on that one, and he has a sad story. He was out of the order before that, but and it gets weird. But I will say all of these sects that he's talking about, like they're all very different. Like it's all over the place with like, oh, was he polygamous? Wasn't he? Oh, polyamorous, blah 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 blah. I mean, they always say, well, he didn't have any other kids. Well, there's been people that have been told, like, we would prefer you not to take a DNA test. The church admits it. So I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, they run the DNA.
I feel like today you figure it out pretty quickly though with DNA tests, like with 23andMe.
With the way that they are in bed, not only in bed, they are John Dee 23andMe and Ancestry.com.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, 23andMe just went completely bankrupt, right? So they're freaking, and then you have to opt out now, and I don't even know if that'll do a freaking thing with
I
your
don't think it will do
really.
anything.
Yeah,
I think they've got it. They're going to do what they want. But also, I think they've got that with everything. If you ever watch like any kind of crime stuff, the one that really got me as a nurse, I thought it had to be blood or something or spit, and they got it from some guy's gym towel from his sweat. So I think we're all screwed.
Right.
Wow.
This Reddit thread too. To Jews who use Ancestry.com, know it's owned by the Mormons who are posthumously baptizing survivors.
Right.
Technically, they don't own it, but they own FamilySearch.org, which pours into it, which was set up through Howard Hughes's organization, Hughes Dynamics, through William Gay, who got the information from the CIA with their blessings from IBM, and it's all a big Nazi bed fest.
Ooh, so it's kind of just like an extension of the punch card system in modern times.
It is.
Huh?
They received it. They received the punch card system and completely, computerized it under William Gay, under Hughes Dynamics. That is real. I do a whole series on Howard Hughes, but I just find all this stuff super interesting when they're trying to, prove different things. Are they trying to not prove things too? Yes. Remember the guy that was going to go prove that the Nephites were from, I think it was Asiatic descent, and then they were like, cut it out. We're going to excommunicate you.
Right.
So, it's a big mess. But
so that's supposed to be the argument for the HAL 9000 in 2001, that it's each one letter removed from IBM, which was encoding. Like there's even parts where like David Bowman is the character. Keir Delay's character is like saying to Hal, he's saying his name over again and again. Hal, do you read me? And then you see it says IBM flashes on his helmet, because Hal is on a murderous rampage, right? And he's the AI, and it's supposed to be this projection of what Kubrick was hip to, of what went on with IBM with the punch card system. The Holocaust wouldn't have been they wouldn't have been able to do things as they did them had it not been for IBM's cooperation. They sent representatives from the New York branch of IBM to Auschwitz as it was in the midst of its
the Mormons
thing, and they said
sent a lot of money there
running smoothly. Yeah, that's true too. That's the thing, but
they also
that's crazy though, because the Jehovah's Witnesses were being killed there as well, not just Jews and handicapped
but the LDS
people
weren't. Yep.
Right, but the LDS were not, and I've always found that kind of peculiar. Why?
To this day, Bill Gates, Microsoft is their number one shareholding, and Bill Gates is the number one farm owning, person here in America. But number two is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and currently, like I said, their number one stock holding is Microsoft, and the others are interesting as well. But then when we see, them procure these IBM different things, right? Like we see them talking with IBM and having this like grand relationship, and guess who's on the board of IBM now? She technically doesn't work there, but that's Bill Gates' mother. They always skip on the mom and go straight to the dad because he's Mr. Eugenicist, but also Mommy Dearest was on this board. And so when we look at all this, you have to understand, before 1978, this would not have been against Brigham's church. Now we're talking about Brigham here. Brigham's church would have been fully supportive of a great white brotherhood, we'll say.
Definitely the idea of a Masonic race, and that's the thing that's interesting about like the descendants of Joseph Smith, right? Because if there were other people that had some sort of lineage, like they've kind of convinced everyone now that that's
one
not
drop
important,
rule,
right?
One drop rule.
Well, like,
sorry.
At this point, they're saying, well, we have a presidency, and the presidency is an order of the 12, but it's really just based on you're earning it, meritocracy. That's not the way it used to be. It used to be that your blood meant that you were descendant from Jesus, and that Joseph has this right to be the prophet because he's descendant from a prophet. So it would stand to reason that if you were the descendant of Joseph Smith, that you would have this blood right to be a prophet, perhaps, or that God would use you more likely because of that prophecy thing. And they really distanced themselves as a church from that idea, especially because Joseph Smith III wasn't into their church. And at this point, the church, the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, has turned itself into something completely different than the LDS church. They call themselves the Community of Christ. They don't even COC. Cock's a horrible name for a church, by the way.
Well, I think they took it from, if you look at Professor Johnny Smith, he had the Church of Christ, and that was well before Joseph Smith ever existed with Dartmouth. So I think they probably got that from there. That's what I'm assuming. But yes, I agree. Horrible moniker.
Isn't marriage just like this anyway? Like in the old world, marriage was just like, first of all, you had royalty who wanted to, like Marie Antoinette of Austria and France, and you're going to bring them together through this consecration, through the marriage, and then for them, and it doesn't mean jack until they have a child. So then the child is the union and the result, like that whole thing. But just beyond that, it's just like elite families. It'd be business deals, it'd be all these things. So when people, like poor people getting married out of love, quote unquote, they're just like, as far as the elites are concerned, they're like, oh, isn't that adorable?
Isn't that funny?
Isn't that funny? Look at them trying to do what we're doing over here when they have their own complete reasons. This is why people would always have liaisons. You'd have who your actual mate is that you're into, and then you're like, but I'm here with this because of, we had to bring these families together so that we could continue whatever goal. So you see that with religious organizations the exact same way. You'd see that with businesses the same way you'd see that with royals. So sometimes I feel like when we're just getting into the bloodline thing, it's like, well, yes, and it goes beyond that into just like, we want to marry these different organizations.
Have you seen Joseph Smith III, like Joseph Smith's son? Have you seen their church's temple, David? Do you know what their temple looks like?
Show me if you got it.
Here, pull it up.
The church procured it, right? Didn't the church procure it a couple years ago?
No, they didn't. They don't have they have the old temple. This is
I've seen this before. Yeah.
Isn't this crazy? This
right.
is like,
so literally the not the Fibonacci, but what is that?
Well, they kind of say it's connected to this Fibonacci, but I see very much like the Tower of Babel.
That's exactly what I see.
The spiral cake thing up to the top, to the spire that goes to the top.
Right, because the effect is supposed to be a one of, oh, look at this thing going disappearing off into heaven. So it's not really just visually. It's not just supposed to be this height. That's like, it's literally going into infinity. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's crazy.
Right. But the LDS don't control this temple yet. This is still controlled by the Community of Christ, right? Which is the offshoot controlled by Joseph Smith's son, right?
Did you ever
another one?
The Nauvoo temple they did just buy. That's true. That was last year, which is the old temple that's been rebuilt, right? Because because Brigham Young, well, you can't say Brigham Young burnt it down, but it burnt down.
It burnt down like Notre Dame.
It's like, well, there's nothing left, so we should just go.
Take it. Yeah, we should go now.
What about the European Union building that's made to look like the Tower of Babel? Because the difference is that one's under construction, whereas this one almost looks like it's made to give the sense that it's like completed. You know what I mean? Like, because it's that Albrecht Dürer representation that they used. Isn't that am I saying that right? The European Union building. Do you know? Pull that up if you can. If you put it side by side with there you go, with the Albrecht Dürer.
Right, the Strasbourg Parliament.
Yeah. So it's like it's not completed. It's like missing the headstone, and more. But that's a big distinction. Okay. Oh, the EU Parliament. There you go. Yeah.
Right. Okay. It doesn't have the finishing touches the way that the COC does. And there's another thing. If you go to Nauvoo, so the other thing about Nauvoo is they did Independence, Missouri, just south of there. They wanted to be in Independence, Missouri, because they said that is Adam and Eve. Oh, this is the wrong page. I think I closed it here. Hold on. This picture right here was the temple, the original Nauvoo temple.
Show him the screen of the pentagrams on it.
Well, first there's the sun. Look at the interesting face of the sun there. And this is the fire. It burned down. And this is what it was left looking like the fall of Carthage. And then they rebuilt it.
It reminds me of the ziggurat. Is that what it's called? The thing in Babylon that was like the.
Here's the downward pointing stars. He's talking about all the stars are downward pentacles
in Iraq, right? Oh, yeah. So there you go.
Between the sun pillars, right? And
But
it's really fascinating on the inside too, because they had like an upstairs for doing temple rites and worship and all these weird practices, right?
But the way that it's positioned, like I would like to see this directly from above, because it looks like, you know what, the in Iraq, that structure that's not exactly a pyramid, but it's pyramidal, and that you have this rectangle and then you have this square at the end of it. Is that it? Yeah. So if you see it from above, though, you get more of a sense of it. But yeah, it's reminding me of that.
It does look a lot like a ziggurat for sure, and you can see the first temple floor plan, right? And there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff. Here's the floor plan here. So the architect's room.
So there you go. This is the tabernacle. You have at the end of it is the Holy of Holies. It is the same thing with what's the capital of I'm saying Canada. What's the Winnipeg? The temple at Winnipeg is modeled after Solomon's temple. They do tours explaining how every single part of it is modeled after that. But yeah.
And if you've seen like Hitler's plan for Germania, it has no candle on what Joseph Smith planned for the new Vatican that was going to be Zion, because Independence, Missouri, he thought was Eden. And if you look at the map, we've done this before, the Western Sea Interior. This is something I always thought was very interesting. If you look at the Western Interior Seaway, well, right there between Utah and Missouri is the coastline where they say that Adam and Eve came out of Eden, and that Eden was here, and this is like a Lemuria kind of thing, that they went into Africa, into particularly North Africa, into Egypt, that's where that they ended up. But that out of Eden was in Missouri. And so they were returning to Eden when they went to Missouri.
You're not talking about John Alexander Dowie. Are you talking about there's Zion, Illinois so John Alexander Dowie was like in a magical war, right? Like he wanted this, like there's a crazy alternate timeline where the Jews, instead of going to Israel, actually set up in America in Zion, Illinois. And so this is so related to everything we're talking about. I'm surprised he hasn't come up more.
Originally, so we should look at that for sure.
John Alexander Dowie, yeah, look him up, yeah. But, yeah.
There we go, right there. City founded in 1900. So John Alexander Dowie went to Illinois, but originally the plan was Zion. Zion, Illinois, isn't that far, by the way, from Missouri. It's actually like pretty. That's the reason that they ended up right after. But Missouri was where they were experiencing the Mormon Wars. Mormon Wars were Missouri. The Mormon Missouri War, when they were genocided. Basically, the government said, we don't like these Mormons, and we're going to kill every man, woman, and child. So they had to leave Missouri. That's how they ended up with Abraham Lincoln in Illinois. They had to leave, but they wanted to be in Independence, Missouri. That's where they originally thought they were going to build this giant city of Zion. And Zion was going to be this crazy, huge city that had temples every direction. And there would be temples to worship in, but temples to do science in as well, like Babylon. There'd be the temple of math, the temple of the stars, the temple of, music. It would just been a giant grid full of temples in every direction. So I think Dowie came after this and probably had the same problem in Missouri and ended up creating something very close to it. But Independence, Missouri is where today that strange Community of Christ temple is. And basically, if you take a rock and you throw it in any direction, you're going to find a different schism of the Mormon church. There's just 30, 40, 100 different versions of the Mormon religion because they don't accept Brigham Young that are all in that area. But it was supposed to be the Vatican of America, where all of this regalia was going to be stored in dozens and dozens of different temples. And the street design, we'd have these huge, wide streets in every direction, this perfect grid. The plan that Joseph Smith had for this city was just completely unparalleled, and they could never do it. So now what you have is called Temple Lot, and Temple Lot's where the temple is supposed to go. Let me see if I can find the map for you.
Somebody in the comments says Missouri is how you say Egyptian in Arabic. Missouri.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I was thinking of Chem as the red earth when you're talking about the red powder earlier and with Kelly, but I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
So this is Temple Lot.
Alchemist's powder. Yeah.
This is a temple lot, and you got Stone Church, you got the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the main intellectual reserve church, has control over a lot of the territory. They just don't have control over the Community of Christ temple or the Community of Christ auditorium, but they've paid a bunch of money to keep this up, basically, because they want it back. And their whole thing is that and Jacob Isbell has talked about this as well, that they were supposed to establish Zion here, and because they didn't do it, they're forever in apostasy. The church itself, this is something that the Latter-day Saints really don't like to hear, but that is it section 132? Is that what it is? Or is that later?
Polygamy?
No, it's earlier. D and C. Maybe we have to get. Maybe it's 130.
You called it though, Heidi. Like,
polygamy.
132 is the one on polygamy for sure. But there's one that says we have to build in Zion, or else they're going to get in trouble if they don't build the temple.
Right.
They don't do exactly what God asks of them, then they're going to be forsaken. And so we're
always in trouble. You're always in trouble. It's not a forgiving thing.
Well, this is like someone broke the vase at like the party while the parents were away, and you got to like rebuild it so when mom and dad come back home, they'll notice something's awry.
Yeah, we got to get that.
You just said it, dude. That's the Tzimtzum. There's two schools of Kabbalah. There's the Bereshit school and there's like the Ezekiel school. And you're like referencing it as a perfect allegory what the Ezekiel school is, with the breaking of the vessel. That the vessel in the beginning was all whole and everything was attached. And we're trying to put it back together as best as we can. Talk about a forgery, right? But it's like it's the thing itself still, I guess. But it's like that's their whole deal. Is they're like everything's been fragmented. We got to bring it back to get to that as best as we can approximate that perfect original structure, So so not to make parents mad. Yeah.
The church though today basically says that they no longer have to build the temple. It's no longer like the most important thing. Where it was, they consider it the most. I think it's Doctrines and Covenants 57. I think it's the one. Okay. The revelation received by Joseph Smith in Jackson County, Missouri, designates the Independence as the center place of Zion, and specifies a spot for the temple. Behold, the place which is now called Independence is the center place, and a spot for the temple is lying westward upon a lot which is not far from the courthouse. The Lord commands the saints to purchase the land for the temple in the city of Zion. And I think it's 58 that says, it warns that if you don't be obedient, you will lose your blessings, right? So, for verily I say unto you, my law shall be kept on this land. Who am I that made man, saith the Lord, that will hold him guiltless, that obeys not my commandments? The revelation also instructs Rigdon to dedicate the land to the temple site. So basically, a lot of people say, a lot of the reason why there are these schisms, they say, well, they didn't do it. They should have done it anyway. They should have basically fought to make this happen in the Valley of Giants, right? And Gog and Magog. And instead they were attacked by Missouri's governor, who was again murdering these kids, and the Missouri governor was a Freemason who was super against Brigham Young and Joseph Smith.
Right. And they were worried. They had more Masons and Mormons like together than they had Masons in multiple like areas. Like the Mormons totally outbred them, literally. So
yeah, it was gonna be. They saw it coming, basically, that they were gonna be replaced instantly, and like this whole community was going to control all of the regalia, and that's a big thing for them. Is this idea, because in the 1500s, you would go to a church basically because it had the hand of St. James or the eye of Magog, George Bush, but also Gog and Magog. When Moses goes into the Promised Land, everyone's afraid of the giants, and so they leave. And God's like, dude, you were supposed to take that land. And they're like, yeah, but God, there were giants. So then they have to wait 40 years outside the desert, right? Or in the desert, which is ironically kind of how long Utah was this like under Brigham Young. It's like the 40 years in the desert thing.
Right. Well, it's water.
And also, ironically, exactly how the angels with John Dee felt when they asked for money. They were like, stop with your stupid shit. Go to work.
Give me money.
You'll notice that the 40 thing, the way it occurs is that, like, so 40 days and 40 nights with the deluge is relating to the Hebrew letter mem, which literally is, if you were to spell out mem, you have water. So there's this idea that they're in the desert, right? They need water. It's like even mana, like the word mana literally is a question. Like the word itself, it means what is it? So you're like, well, what is mana? I don't know. Mana means what is it? Like you're not going to know what it is, but they're trying to.
But Salt Lake City is cool. Like every once in a while, I'll be driving across the country and I'll stop in Salt Lake.
And you
like,
didn't say hi to me. I'm upset with you.
It's been a while. I think it was before we knew each other. Of course, I will if I come back again, and I will because every once in a while, if your feet are ever feeling like you've got like I've luckily not had this problem, but I've seen this happen for people. They have like toe fungus and stuff, and they go to the Salt Lake. If you wash your feet in the salt water, that Salt Lake it's a purifying ritual that's unparalleled. It does amazing things for you. And I think that's the whole point.
That salt in that lake is the most comparative to the Dead Sea, as far as I've studied all of its elements and like how they compare to other places that have salt water. Yeah, literally. And it makes no sense, honestly, because Brigham Young came here and said this is the place, and it makes no sense if you don't look at everything, because you're like, we have an uninhabitable area, we have all this desert or cold, it's either freaking 110 degrees or it's really freezing with snow, we've got all these mountains around, like it just seems like not the best idea. And he's like, yep, that's it. And then you look at it and it's the one place we have mountains, but we have deserts, we have a Dead Sea basically here, we have fresh water, we have all kinds of weird, like I would dare say natural portals, honestly. But
yeah, in Utah, the idea of the Utah, the Utes, the Jews, and the Ishmaelites, that Brigham Young thought these native tribes were the Ishmaelites, similar to the ones in Egypt that took Moses in. But again, okay, so Doctrine and Covenants 97, yea, verily I say unto you, I give you a commandment that you should build a house in which house I have designed to endow those whom I have chosen with the power from on high. And verily, if Zion observe not, do whatever I commanded her, I will visit her according to her works with sore afflictions, pestilence, plagues, and the sword of vengeance with devouring fire, right? And so this is a big thing for them, is that they screwed up. They didn't do what they were supposed to do in Missouri. And they end up, in Utah, which for whatever reason, the government starts saying everything horrible they can about Mormons. If you start looking for anti-Mormon cartoons from the 1800s,
something.
It's crazy. The East
Paranoid
Coast
has some.
They're basically, I think you went. There's some crazy stuff because they're trying to convince people they need to go to war with Utah, because Utah there you go. Utah is this independent deseret. It's its own nation, its own country. The women are being forced into slavery. They're being sexually trafficked. Blah 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 blah. All the stuff that they tried to make Brigham Young look like he was in bed with Native Americans.
They did try to leave. They did try to leave America to be left alone, but then they were reacquired.
Right. So they were surrounded because of this propaganda campaign that they said we need to go into Utah and invade. So they invaded Utah. Yeah, go back up.
Go up one.
Technically,
for the alligator oil. Oh, is it crocodile oil time? Never mind. Keep going.
But yeah, they surrounded, basically the way that we invaded Mexico or we invaded another country.
Well,
one of the most important things was to invade Utah, to conquer Utah.
It's kind of like Heaven's Gate, the film Heaven's Gate, right? Which has had 2 hours edited out of it, which I'm really curious what those are. Where you have like from on high, they're like, kind of like putting people against each other, and like they don't care about, like, they just want them to take care of it. We got something, they're organizing, they're doing this thing here. Let's just stamp that out. We'll just do these propaganda campaigns to get everybody to turn against each other, right? Is that what's happening here? Or
well, just like the John Dee, like that's the same thing. Like he was trying to do what? Bring everyone together under what? One unified new world order. He's the first one that I know of, at least, that coined it. And the Mormons are very much like that back in the day, but they wanted it to be their religion. They do want a one world religion, but it has to be Mormons because everyone else is going to hell. So, but I mean, they're still keeping it divisive, like you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Seems purposeful.
Definitely. They were definitely afraid of the power of those people. And I will say this for Brigham, though I think he was an asshole. And if you want to watch Primeval, and this whole thing is like not 100% true at all, but the show is interesting. I do think he was a great leader. Whether he led it correctly, that's not the point. He led them regardless and scared some people. But I also think, just like John Dee, I think he got in bed with the president, not the queen, which sucks for him because that's a dude, but whatever. He at least had a chick,
Right.
Yeah, never know. You got to have a beard. Me and Thomas have already talked about that.
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't trust anybody's opinion really, unless they have a big long beard.
Wizard,
like that's like
wizards.
sure.
Yeah.
Krishnamurti used to
Pratt's
joke
style.
about that. Krishnamurti would be like, "I don't care how long the man's beard is. It doesn't. You can't base somebody's authority on their beard."
I don't know. Orson Pratt had quite a beard. I think if the beard sticks out in this big wild kind of
Well, Orson
way.
tells the truth. He said too much stuff. They're gonna make him. Yeah, he said too many things.
Orson, yeah,
They're
he
gonna-
stood up against Brigham Young quite a bit, and eventually silenced
He
him. and
tried to
threatened his
keep the
family.
magic. Yeah, he tried to keep the magic. He really did. He tried to keep the collab and all the things, but no.
I hope I didn't
Mm.
completely derail you, Heidi, because I know you had more things you were trying to share, and I just jumped in with the DNC. But...
Oh, it's okay. This is fun too. I just wanted to make jokes too about their beards because we just did that show.
Hold on. Corporate wants you to find the difference between.
You would be
There
a
we
great
go.
Brigham.
You would be good.
Oh.
You got 55 wives? You need 55 wives. Hey, where's a hat? You need a top hat.
That's true. He does have some wild side fur there.
Yeah, he needs all that.
So what's up with Abraham Lincoln with the hat? Was that really him? Some kind of subliminal statement about Joseph Smith who had been assassinated? Is that really where we're going with this?
I think so. I think he's just trying to, people knew the imagery already because abolition, before they knew about polygamy with Joseph Smith, they knew about abolition with Joseph Smith. So here's a guy who's a religious guy who's trying to fight for equality, etc., of men and women and African Americans. And so they already had the imagery. So he's picking up on the imagery, even though most people didn't know that he was using the hat for magical purposes. They knew that that was the symbol associated with Joseph Smith. And so, and that became something 15 years later. He just used it because it was.
Do we know
caricature.
like the origin of the rabbit in the hat trick being so like central to a symbol of magic, and then pull the tablets with the hat? Is there like some crazy like obvious connection there? I don't know.
I'll Google it. I don't know it. I want to know now.
No, AI is going to tell you. No, there's no. Just leave this one alone. But yeah, no, I don't know.
And
I
there
think-
is another direct Joseph Smith Abraham Lincoln connection because it says here that Joseph Smith spent the winter in Washington, D.C. seeking compensation for the Saints' losses in Missouri in 1839. So he might have actually brushed against Abraham Lincoln.
Mhm.
So there's no record of them meeting. It's another one of those cases.
There's
Is
a
that
letter they wrote, I thought, though, right?
But
Isn't
I'll
there
tell
some
you, the
interaction?
presidents become very close with the Mormons later. They make up, and let me say, well, they're all buddies, I believe, at this point.
Well, you're talking
And Brigham-
Skull and Bones connection here. I mean, you
Well,
can't get
that
much
too.
more.
And Brigham Young runs away, but then the first thing he does is help finish the railroad. So, I mean, he has interesting things he does, and I do think that he was smart enough to see, they were going to have to play ball at some point. But he was extremely racist. He was horrible. He wasn't like Joseph. He literally said, if you see your wife in bed with a black man, run a sword through both of them, then let them live. Like, kill them all. Like, he was horribly racist. So it got flipped.
Different.
I'm always like a little questioning of when we have like these feuds that are well known, like in society, where we were talking about people who are like, oh yeah, they were really at odds with each other. I always wonder if it's like, how Jesse Ventura said that Worldwide Wrestling kind of prepared him for politics, like John Kerry and George W. like both being Skull and Bones members, and then they're really having at each
They're
other here, and
buddies.
you're like, I don't
Yeah,
know, man.
no.
It seems like this is like just a stage,
Oh,
so
that's a hair statement right there. Both of them.
Wild.
That's
Yeah.
why he
Heard it
needed
here
the
first,
hat.
Abraham Lincoln was black. We all know this.
We all knew this, yeah. Just makes sense.
He needs the hat.
Right.
That's why he wore it.
Prince told me that. Louis Comte apparently is a Parisian magician called the King's Conjurer, born in Geneva, who allegedly performed the first rabbit out of a hat trick, even though Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin did some similar sort of conjuring and out of hat magic before him. I'm sending in the private chat the links to those two. And then Isaac Fox might be the first one famous for pulling anything out of anything else, right? Out of magic boxes and things like that.
Okay.
But
yeah,
Also a Mormon, I assume.
I mean, he has that vibe, but no, I think
look.
he might have been his own. Allegedly, this is earlier on. So Louis Comte was from Geneva, and apparently he was practicing magic as well. But I'm not sure if you'd say he was a Mormon or just like doing the same kind of folk magic. It looks like they were both really interested in folk magic.
Well, I truly, they say folk magic, but I will say this, it's Solomonic magic that they knew. Not to say all magic or folk magic doesn't exist. I'm saying exactly from the parchments, they knew more. Like I wish they would quit making the Smiths look so stupid. I hate it the worst. Like, even though I'm not a Mormon anymore, it's still annoying. Like, that's, yeah.
Well, they're George W. Bush in them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep.
In what sense? It takes a wise man to play the part of a fool, and then are we projecting?
Pretty much.
Yeah, and
they say they were poor farmers that didn't know anything, couldn't even read or write, but he's learning how to write Hebrew. Good on you guys. Smart.
And all the follies are just blamed on straight ignorance as opposed to apathy or design.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, they were no fools.
Yeah, or it's 5D chess or whatever,
That I agree. That they were, but I don't think any of that family was idiotic like they want to say they were. That's just weird.
I'm gonna start driving us home, so let me know if anyone needs to stop for a break or get some snacks. Otherwise, we're heading home right now. Let me let Heidi do all of her plugs. If you want to hear more about Heidi and John Dee and Joseph Smith, and ultimately what's been selling me more and more on Mormonism, the more I hear from her, the more I wish I had grown up Mormon. But go ahead and tell everyone if they also want to get converted to Mormonism, where they can do that.
Well, remember, all the magic is gone now. Brigham killed it all, so it's not quite the same anymore.
It's relying on me to bring it back, and people like me to go in there and let them know that.
Go in there and let them know.
On the gold mine. Like I'm a
doing
modern day treasure hunter.
That's right. Well, I definitely think they need some shaping up, or maybe just split the two, right? But there's the CIA-fed Mormon Church, and then there's the magical Mormon Church. So Brigham,
the magical mystery church,
yes, and mystery schools. Which, what a better way to send your kids away if you're in the elite population of the Mormon Church to a mystery school than an LDS mission. It's all covered for you. Ta-da! But
True.
if you want to hear more about silly Mormon things like that are all true and heavily researched, because as silly as I am, I do like it to be standalone on these topics because I know how controversial they are. Growing up Mormon, living in Utah. So there's that. I live in Utah still. People hate me. It's fine. But if you like me, you can find me at unfilteredrisepodcast.com or Unfiltered Rise everywhere podcasts are served for Podchaser. If you are finding me on YouTube, you will only see me on here about once a week because YouTube likes to slam me with little, you did this bad or that bad, and I really don't want to lose my channel. So check me out on Spotify. That's it for me.
Perfect.
It's difficult to navigate YouTube's proclivities.
Yeah, it's a very tightrope we walk. And I appreciate all of you, and it was so nice to meet you again.
The next up, we've got the amazing David Charles Plate, the MK Ultrasound 723, who always tells people to basically go to the Twitter page, click on highlights, and then you've got, I don't know how many, hundreds, 500, 1,000.
Actually, technically, there's more on the website, but I do have a fair amount. It's definitely over 100 here on Twitter, I think. But yes, album film pairings.
So you can also just go to the syncbook.com. You're going to scroll down a little bit, and then you're going to see Sync Flicks, which we've got a whole bunch of different movies that David's paired original albums with movies the same way. What is it? The Wizard of Oz and Pink Floyd?
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's the first one to really kind of popularize the idea of synchronizing albums with films. But I've been at this since junior high, and I'm 43. And so this is like basically my life's work up here for free streaming and download. Don't watch it on a phone anyway. Apple doesn't like these. It doesn't want to play them. But if you're on a computer or you want to do HDMI, I recommend downloading so you can just kind of cut through the buffering if there's one that jumps out to you. But this is many years of work, and they're available for streaming for people interested. Yep.
Awesome.
And then we've got the Xirtus website, which is one of many. Oh, I don't see this one very often.
Xirtus is everything. It's true. Yeah. X Church is live. X Church is real. If you want to learn more about Tartaria or any of like the hidden history or talk more about Mormonism, definitely check out my channel, Watch History Revised. This is a fun video to watch if you haven't seen it already. You can look into some really interesting ways of looking at things, generally new epistemology. But yeah, watch Xirtus, go to Xirtus on YouTube, go to Xirtus.com. And then also, hey, don't forget to watch Heidi and Paranoid American's whole series of Mormon Mondays, because I've been watching them through because I missed a bunch of them. I'm going to try to get involved with the next ones that you do, because I think we should just like plug those even harder. So some of my favorite podcasts that I've been watching recently. They're just so much fun to see these conversations, and I want to be more a part of them. So Thank you guys for doing that. And then, one more thing. If you are interested in like Mormonism, like Latter-day Saint mysticism from people that are still practicing it, you could say, I would recommend a couple books. Let me pull up on my screen here. There's 2 books that you could look at these are church approved, basically. I think the church is totally fine with these, which is The Key to the Keystone by my dear friend Jonah Barnes. This will tell you all sorts of interesting things about how apocryphal texts unlock the Book of Mormon's brass plates. I think this is a really worth it book to read. Whether you're for or against it, you ought to read this. I mean, I think I'm going to send this to the Eastern Orthodox. Anybody interested in Gnosis or Gnosticism or heresy, they should probably read The Key to the Keystone. It's really fascinating, deep dive into things. And it's forwards by John Butler, DJ, who's been on the show before.
John Butler. What is up with these John Dees all over the place?
And you've actually met him, because I've had you on with him before, actually. If you remember this guy here, he's a writer who does sci-fi and also has his own book on Mormonism in the language of Adam, which kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier with Enochi and DJ John Butler, DJ we call him. So check out both of those books, Key to the Keystone and In the Language of Adam. Both of them are really cool, and they're not going to get you in trouble, but they will get you into trouble in like the cool way, because you'll know way too much about mysticism and Mormonism, and I highly recommend them for sure.
Along with xchurch.us, which is, I believe, the only denomination that outwardly believes in time travel.
Yeah.
And repairing timelines.
Aliens might have that too, but yeah, gotcha.
I'm pretty sure that they're just fooling around with space, not with time. We win.
No, but the UFOs, they're time machines. I learned a lot about this kind of stuff. I do my best thinking on the bus.
That's
true. Why I don't drive. See,
this is our best bet for getting Heidi right back to Kolob. She's sitting on the space-time bus with me.
You're not supposed to say that out loud, though. Now she's gonna resist it. She's got oppositional defiance.
She's cool. I think she's cool with it. You can hold my hand. Second star to the right. Straight on the morning. We're going to Neverland.
There we go. I can be the one living waters in the group. Okay, that's a bad joke. Sorry, keep going.
I'll throw my plugs at the very end. I'm going to play a little NASA comic, and then I got credits at the end of all my videos. If you want to back me on Patreon, I'll put your name in the final credits, depending on your tier, even if you want to just join on YouTube. So please do that so we can keep bringing you more of these. And thank you guys for an awesome conversation. I feel like we could do another John Dee part 2, just like we're going to do a Beards part 2. Maybe John Dee will be in the Mormon Beards part 2.
John Dee's cool beard. Yeah,
we're gonna have to.
So did Kelly.
We should also talk about the 116 missing pages, because that was what Mark Hoffman was working on as he ended right before he got destroyed. Was Joseph Smith was supposed to have had 116 pages which were destroyed, the missing 116 pages, and definitely important stuff to look into more. Like what is it about those 116 pages that the Mormon Church isn't allowed to see? Right. Let's talk about that sometime.
All right, next time, guys. Peace.
Ready for a cosmic conspiracy about Stanley Kubrick, moon landings, and the CIA? Go visit nasacomic.com.
NASAcomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm NASAcomic.com, go visit NASAcomic.com. Go visit NASAcomic.com. Yeah, go visit NASAcomic.com. Oh, NASAcomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm NASAcomic.com, go visit NASAcomic.com. Go visit NASAcomic.com. Yeah, go visit NASAcomic.com.
Never a Straight Answer is a 40-page comic about Stanley Kubrick directing the Apollo space missions.
Yeah, go visit NASAcomic.com.
This is the perfect read for comic, Kubrick, or conspiracy fans of all ages. For more details, visit nasacomic.com.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper, the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers evading. Whatever the course, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Matters not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.